If you want to build and launch a real mobile application using AI, this tutorial is for you. We are not building some random demo application that looks good for 5 minutes. We are building a modern AI trip planner that you can run on your actual phone, share with your friends, and even use as a real product. I'll show you the exact workflow that I use to design beautiful apps with AI and then turn those designs into real working mobile apps. Just for context, I built and deployed my own mobile app to the App Store in only 14 days. It's a calorie tracker app called Bulky AI, and I got my first customer just 5 days after the launch. If you're curious and want to test this out, feel free to check it out. It's on the App Store. So that's the proof that I know what I'm talking about, and in this video I'm gonna share everything that I know for completely free. Before we start coding, let me quickly show you the end result so that you know what we are building in this course. So this is an AI trip planner app where users need to sign in before using it. We have two different authentication options, which are Google and Apple. If you want to add more options, I'll show you how to do it later in the video. Once you sign in, you'll see 4 different tabs, which are Home, AI Assistant, Trips, and Profile. And as you can see, we have this beautiful iOS liquid glass effect because we are using native tabs. From the home screen, you can start planning a trip with AI by pressing the Get Started button. So here, let's say I want to visit Tokyo, Japan. I can select my travel dates, budget, number of travelers, interests, and travel pace. Once I press the Generate button, OpenAI will create the trip in the background. Then we will be redirected to the trip details screen, where we can see the full trip, a day-by-day itinerary, places to visit, things to do, and a map with all the locations. And if I don't like something in the plan, I can use the AI assistant to change it. For example, I can ask it to make the trip more relaxed, add more local food, lower the budget, or really anything custom. So that's how you generate a trip. On the home screen, you can also see your latest trip and popular destinations. From the Assistant tab, you can chat with AI about anything, but we will mainly use it to get ideas and suggestions for our trips. In the trip screen, you can see every trip you have generated. And finally, in the Profile tab, you can see your account details, logout, and even delete your account. Deleting your account will also remove all of your data from the database as it should be. And by the way, this delete your account is not really an optional feature. If you want to deploy your app to the App Store, this is a feature that you have to have. Otherwise, Apple will reject your application. So we're going to talk about these kind of tips and tricks later in the video. We will also add a rate app button so users can leave a review. On top of this mobile application, we are going to build a landing page for the web, and it's going to contain a privacy policy, terms of service, and a support page with an email address. And again, these are the things that you need to have if you want to publish your application to the App Store. And throughout this tutorial, I'm going to share these kinds of tips and tricks that you need to know before deploying your app to the App Store. And I'll even show you how to create these types of beautiful app mockups for your future projects. Now, this is not a vibe coding tutorial, so we are not going to randomly ask AI something like, build me a mobile app and don't make any mistakes, or fix all the issues. If you have ever used AI, then you know that those prompts almost never work. So instead, we'll use a structured workflow. And this is the exact same workflow that I used to build and launch my own app in 2 weeks. I have actually documented that entire process day by day inside my school community. But it is not just a course where you watch videos and disappear. It's also a community of developers who are sharing their own progress, asking questions, getting feedback, and launching real apps. And one of our students has already built and deployed their own application in 14 days just by following along with us day by day. And to be honest, it's pretty cool to see that this workflow actually works, and this is kind of like the proof. So if you want to go deeper after this tutorial and build your own application alongside us, I will leave the link in the description. Feel free to join us. Now with that said, let's talk about the tech stack of this project. And I have to say that we are using some of the best tools out there. First off, we are going to use React Native with Expo, and this is genuinely one of the best ways to get started with mobile development. And this was the exact same tech stack that I used to launch my app. For authentication, we are going to use Clerk, which is pretty easy to integrate and it is ready for production. In my own application, I have also used Clerk and I have integrated Google, Apple, and email options. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do it as well. For the database, we are going to use Postgres, which will be provided by Neon. They're going to host everything in the cloud, so we don't need to worry about managing our own database server. For error tracking and monitoring, we will use Sentry. This will allow us to see the errors that real users get inside the application, so we can just jump into our codebase and fix them quickly. For background jobs, we will use ingest, and for image optimizations, we will use ImageKit. And also we will use CodeRabbit as our AI code reviewer. Basically, it will scan our code base and let us know if we have any issues and how to fix them. Now, the best part is all of these tools are completely free to get started with, so you don't need to pay anything to be able to follow along. I will provide some special links in the description. If you sign up with those links, you will get extra free credits. Okay, so with all that said, grab your coffee and let's get started. Alright, so to get started with, you just need an empty folder which is opened up in VS Code. You can use any kind of code editor, but in my case, I'll be going with VS Code. And for the folder name, I came up with this name called Triply, but you can really call this anything that you wish. Before we jump into coding, I'd like to mention that every single one of you needs to have Node.js installed in their machine. This is the only prerequisite that you need to have. I think most of you already have it, but just in case if you don't, go ahead and visit nodejs.org, and from here just press the download link and then everything would be selected for you automatically. Just go ahead and install it. Once you have that, you can double check just by opening up your terminal, or I think PowerShell if you're on Windows. You would just say node -- version, and if you see a version, that means it has been installed successfully. Okay, so with that said, now I have another thing that I want to mention pretty quickly. So the goal of this tutorial is not really getting the exact same end result. So it is fine if you get a little bit different UI than what I get, because AI doesn't really give the exact same end result to everyone, which is absolutely fine because the goal of this tutorial is understanding the workflow to build actual apps. So if you understand this workflow, I am pretty sure that you will be able to build your own app in 2 weeks as well. Like this is my app. Again, I just want to mention it. It took me exactly 14 days to build it and deploy it to App Store. And this is one of our students' app. He also just follow along with me every single day, and then he has his own application which is deployed on App Store, right? Now, this is not a vibe coding tutorial, right? So we will not just go ahead and randomly ask something to AI, but instead we will have a structured workflow, and I'm gonna get into that in a couple of minutes. And now I see some of you guys are very depressed because like thinking AI can build anything, and some of you guys are really excited thinking AI can build anything. Well, I'm definitely one of these guys. I never been this one, and I think I'll never try to be. Yeah, so I just found the opportunity, like AI can build anything. Let me just go ahead and build a mobile application, right? Build it, deploy it to App Store, and start making some money. This is the actual screenshot from my own iPhone, right? From Revenue Kit. Like, I'm starting making some money. I got, I think, 4 or 5 different subscriptions so far. Some people subscribe to monthly, some people subscribe to yearly, but yeah, if you try to kind of like be futuristic, I think eventually you'll make some money with AI. And my goal is to kind of like show you the entire workflow in this tutorial. Now, speaking of AI, you can use really any tool that you wish. I'll be using Claude, but you can use Cursor or Codex, I don't know, Windsurf, Gemini, it could be really anything. Now, I would say just feel free to spend at least $20 a month in one of these tools. Even though I know that this is not really possible for everyone, some of you guys are students. Like the worst case, what you can do, get the codex. Let me just show you that. I'm gonna say codex pricing because they have like $8 pricing. Yeah, this one. Like at least you can get this one. You can also use the free plan, but it is just like it's not gonna be enough to build this kind of an app. It is just for exploration, I would say. So if you're smoking, just then I would say stop smoking to be able to afford one of these. Or if you're going to cinema every here and then, just stop doing it, right? So you get the point. I think just find a way to make $20 a month and pay in one of these tools. In my case, I'll be using Claude, but you can use any other tools. The workflow will mostly be the same. Now, as I said, I'll be using Claude Code, and there are a couple of different ways of using it. You can use it from the terminal. You can get their their Mac desktop application, or I think for Windows they also have it. Basically, it's a desktop app, or you can use it in VS Code. This is what I'll be doing. You can just go ahead from the extensions. You can install the Claude. Let me just show you, like Claude Code extension. You need to sign in, and then you will be able to use it. So it is this one, pretty popular. Like I'm gonna get into the usage. But yeah, this is what I would say for this tutorial. Just don't really be stressed about AI because you cannot really change it. Then instead learn how to build apps and hopefully start making some money. Now with that said, let's talk about the workflow that we're gonna have in this course. So before we write a single line of code, first we will plan and describe our entire project to AI. So we're going to define the idea, goals, features, pages, user flow, and tech stack. Like what I would do is just spending the first day with the entire plan, because if you don't know what you're building, how would AI know, right? You can use AI to, suggest you all kinds of features and eventually come up with a fully completed plan. And this is what we'll try to do. Once we have the plan, we are going to use a structured prompt to generate the UI design. So we're going to get the screens, layouts, and visual style. We will even get a design system. Then once we have the UI design, we will just break it into features. So let's say our first screen is authentication page, right? So we'll go ahead and design it. Sorry, we will implement it actually. We already designed that. And then once we build one feature, first we will check it by ourselves, right? So we will test manually. And then we are gonna run an AI code review just to check if we have any issues, security problems in our code base or not. And if we have some problems, then we'll go through this a couple of times until we don't really have any issues. So once the feature is completed, we're going to save the progress by committing our code. Then we will go into the next step. So we will check if we have more features, then we will do this workflow all over again. Eventually, we are going to have no more features left, so the project will be completed. Okay, so you can take a screenshot, or actually you don't have to, because I'm gonna provide these diagrams for free in the description. Now with that said, let's talk about the tech stack that we're gonna be using. First off, let me close these tabs. I will go right here and I'm gonna search for expo.dev/documentation. And you can take a look at the expo.dev itself. Like pause the video and take a look at it. This is really one of the best ways to build mobile apps, and it is completely production ready. Like you can see all these apps are built with Expo, and they're like very, very large actual applications. So yeah, we will go into their documentation, and they have this script. Let me zoom in. It is called npx create expo app at latest. So I'm going to copy it and go into VS Code. I'll open up my terminal. I'm going to just paste this in. At the end, I'm going to put dot, which means initialize this expo application under the current folder. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Here, I'll be going with the latest SDK. At the time that I'm recording this video, it is 56, but when you're watching it, if it is something like 57 or 58, that's completely fine, and go ahead, follow along with it. Okay, so I'm gonna run this. This is going to get a bunch of different files and folders, basically like a template. So this will try to install the dependencies, and you'll see that we have a bunch of different components, constants, hooks, so on and so forth. We will basically delete most of them, and we'll start from absolute scratch. And there is a script under the package.json. Let's just scroll to the bottom. This is called reset project. Basically, it is going to run this file. Like, you can see what this does, but essentially it is going to delete most of them, right? It's only going to leave one single file or a folder. Let's try to run it. This is a script that Expo team provides you, by the way. It is this one, right? So if you want to delete most of them, they say you can do it with this one single line. So I'm going to say npm run reset project. And it says, do you want to move existing files to an example folder instead of deleting them? I want to delete, so I'm going to say, no, just go ahead and delete. So press N and then press enter. Okay, so as you can tell, everything has been deleted, or I would say most of the things. We only have the source app folder, then two different files, not three. Okay, so with this, we have a very basic mobile application that we can run at the moment. And by the way, if you have never used Expo or React Native before, I have a full crash course for completely free on the channel. I'm going to link it in the description. It is around 2 hours, and you will see some really good comments. Everyone really liked it. So here in this video, we will not use AI at all, and I will explain everything step by step. If you're interested, you can double check that. It has been published 8 months ago, but it is still very, I would say, up to date. Even if you watch it 4 years later, it'll still be up to date because the general idea is going to be the same. We are using the same tech stack, which is React Native and Expo. Okay, so with that said, in this tutorial, I'm not going to give you a full crash course on Expo or React Native. If you're interested, you can check out this video. So with that said, we want to start by planning this project. Now, again, you can use Claude, you can use any kind of AI model, different AI agents. Really, it could be anything. In my case, this is how I can start Claude in VS Code by pressing this button. So I'm going to get a Claude Code instance. Now here in Claude, if you have never used it, there are a couple of different modes, right? In our case, we will start with the plan mode. And I think automatically you will get with the auto mode, you will get started with this one, but you can always change it. So I would usually use plan mode whenever I want to plan a feature, or in this case, the entire project. And if I need to build something, I would just leave it in the edit automatically, right? So it would edit any kind of files without asking me. If you go with the ask before edits, it is going to ask for a permission before doing anything. And I think this is the one that you would like to get started with initially, just to understand how that works. But once you understand it, then I would say just leave it as edit automatically. Okay. So with that, but just be careful. This could sometimes delete some files. So you would like to always keep track of every single file with git. And this is something that I'm going to show you as well. Okay, so with that said, first off, I'm going to select the plan mode, and I'm going to give you a prompt, which is project agnostic. You can use it in any kind of future projects. And by the way, for the model, you can really use anything. I think in my case, I'm using the default, which is Opus 4.8 at the moment, but you can really use any other models. Okay, so let me just go ahead and show you the prompt to plan the entire application. So I'm gonna leave this as a link in the description. Go ahead and copy everything from start until the very end. And the goal of this prompt is basically making sure that AI will ask us all kinds of questions about this project. It is kind of interviewing us so that AI doesn't really guess any feature. And let's try to read this prompt out loud. So we basically say, you are my senior technical co-founder and product architect. I'm about to build a new software project and I want us to be in complete alignment before writing any single line of code, or the final plan is written. So basically the job of AI is not to write the code initially, but instead to interview us about this entire project. Now again, the goal of this so that AI doesn't really guess any feature, but instead asks me all kinds of questions about this project. Okay, so it's gonna ask me like, for authentication, do you want to implement only Google or Apple or even both of them, right? Or even any kind of different things. So you get the point. This is for us to be in the same page with AI. And this is what I would do. Like, this is what I have done to build any kind of apps, really. So I want you to copy this entire prompt. Then we will go into Claude Code. So from here, you will select the plan mode. And here, by the way, it says like it takes this file into the context, but you can, just press that and toggle it. It's not really that important. Just paste your prompt. So you can paste this prompt to any kind of project. Once you paste it, you would like to describe your actual application. And this is what I'll be doing. You can either type this out, or even better, you can press this and start talking. And this is exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so the project that I want to build is going to be an AI trip planner. For the tech stack, I want to use Clerk for authentication, Neon for Postgres database, I want to use Ingest for background jobs, and I want to use ImageKit for image optimizations and transformations. So here I realized there is a typo. I'll go ahead and fix it. I'm going to say tech stack. Okay, and then I'll continue talking. For error tracking and monitoring, obviously I'm going to be using Sentry. And when it comes to the authentication, I want to include, I think, Google and Apple option. For now, I'd like to skip the email authentication. Now here I just paused it. You don't really need to provide these because it's going to ask you in the interview in a second, but I just wanted to mention it still. The other thing that you would like to do is describing the goal of this project, right? So here I'm going to go ahead and say something like, basically users will use this application to generate trips powered by AI. So let's say I just signed up. I will get to the home screen, and from the home screen, I can say something like generate a trip. So I'm going to give the location that I want to visit, let's say Japan, Tokyo, then how many days I want to stay, then maybe amount of travelers, like one person, two people, etc., and maybe like the budget. So these kinds of questions. And user will say generate the trip, and yeah, the trip will be generated by AI. We will see some kind of a loading screen, and then user will be redirected to the trip detail screen. So I hope you are able to see what I'm doing here, basically describing the project in a high level overview. Now, it is not maybe unfair because I have already built the project, as you can tell. Like, this is what I built in the intro that you just watched, but that was the exact same workflow that I have done. Of course, I didn't really provide all kinds of details. It's going to be answered with the interview in a couple of minutes. But yeah, just go ahead and describe the basics of your application. I would say go ahead and decide your tech stack from the start. So I always want to have my tech stack determined by me, not really by AI. So I know the tools that I'm using rather than asking AI to come up with the options. But other than this, I'm gonna leave everything for AI to decide for me, right? And I think with this now we can go ahead and run this. So since we are in the plan mode, we are gonna get a bunch of different questions. And the end result that we might have could be a little bit different than this one, right? Because AI doesn't really give the exact same end result every single time, but the general idea will be the same. And when I was building it, like initially, to be honest, I didn't really had this assistant screen in mind at all. But as I built the plan and as I added the other screens, Like at some point, AI tell me something like maybe I can add an assistant screen, right? So you can't really decide every single feature from the start, but you can try to minimize the guesswork from AI, right? So that's the goal of the plan mode that we are using right here. So this is going to kind of like first read your code base, right? It says, okay, I understand that you have a fresh Expo application. Now we have a bunch of different questions that we'll answer. Okay, so here it says which AI model should generate the trips. In my case, I already have an OpenAI key, so I'm gonna say go ahead and use this one. Now, since this is Claude, it says Anthropic is kind of like recommended, but I already have some credits in OpenAI, so I'm gonna select this one. And if you don't really want to spend any money, then you can select Google Gemini. I think they have a free plan. So in your case, if you want to select OpenAI, you only need to spend $5. But again, I think Google Gemini will be free to get started with. Okay, so I'm going to select this one and then we'll get into the next project. For the backend, do we want a separate Node backend or Expo router API routes? This is recommended for version 1 and this is what I'd like to use. Basically, we don't really need to build a separate backend, but instead under the source, under the API folder, we can build our API routes. Okay, this is what it says. I'm going to be using this one. Then here it says trip generation in async using ingest. How does the mobile app learn the trip is ready and move from loading screen to detail screen? So I'm going to use the poll DB for status. And you can take a look at the other options like push notification, real-time subscription, but I think this is what I'll be going with. And then the other question is, what does a generated trip actually contain? Now, in our case, in the end result, this is what I really liked. So we have a full itinerary, as you can tell. Like if you scroll, this is what you would see. And then we have like a map and some details. So in my case, I think I'm just gonna select this one. And you can always update this in the future, right? So here I'll just say day by day itinerary, and I think we can select a couple of different things. So I'm gonna say the budget background, sorry, breakdown, not background. We can say, yeah, places, hotel suggestions, should we get them as well? Yeah, let's go ahead and actually select this one. Why not? So once you have all of them answered, you can also just add different thing, right? So you can really add any kind of custom message if you wanted to, and then you can submit the answers. So I think it's gonna ask us some more questions, I believe. Eventually, once you answer everything, you're gonna get a plan. So this plan will be generated in a plan.md file, and then we will just follow that plan step by step. Now the other questions we got are about place data, maps, ORM, and generation limits. I think here for the first question, I'll go and say use LLM text only, no photos for the version 1. So I'm gonna say going to the next question, do places need to render on a real map in the trip details screen? So I'm gonna say yes, interactive map. I think this could be a small map just like this one. Here is one catch. If you're using if you're using Apple Maps, you don't really need any API keys. But if you're gonna be using Google Maps on Android or even like on iOS, for Google Maps, you're gonna need an API key. So here I'm just gonna say, maybe let's just other answer. For now, I'm gonna say only use iOS Maps, or let's just say Apple Maps without any API keys set up. Skip Google Maps for V1, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go into the next question. Obviously, I want to use the result ORM. I think Prisma also really good, but I think the result is gonna be my option. Then the generation limits. Basically, it says if you want to make this application paid, initially I'll just make it free, like it's gonna be for the version 1, and I'm gonna submit my answers. Now, once I answered those questions, I got a follow-up by Claude. It says you originally listed ImageKit for image optimization, but LLM text only means there aren't really place photos to optimize in version 1. Now, this is such a beautiful follow-up, but we will be using ImageKit for different things. For now, I'm going to ignore this. And here it also says that Apple Maps with no API key only works on iOS. Android would need Google Maps and an API key. So here the follow-up question is which platform are in scope for V1? Now in my case, I want to build it for only for iOS, but if you are building it for Android as well, or even for web, you can select one of these options. I'll be going with iOS only for version 1. Okay, so let me zoom in as well. So here it says, when it comes to the ImageKit role, what do you want to have? Now, one of the use cases that I want to use ImageKit for is going to be the user profile photos. And the other one, let me just actually go with the other option. I'm going to say use ImageKit for user profile photos and custom cover images for trips, for generated trips. And let me show you the end result. Basically, within the trip screen, this background is generated by AI automatically. But if you wanted to update it, you can press this button and upload a custom photo, right? And we would like to use ImageKit here to optimize the image. So that's that option that I just passed. Let's go into the next question. It says, what inputs does the generation form collect beyond location, days, travelers, and budget? Let me just show you that form. So when you say get started, what you're going to see, I think I didn't take the screenshot. Let me just go ahead and grab it. So here's what I had in the version that I built previously. Basically the place to go, the exact dates, the budget, should it be budget friendly, comfort, or luxury, travelers, this is the count, like either 1, 2, 3, etc. Interests and travel pace. Now you can add more if you got different questions, but in my case, I'll say the exact actual start date. Interests, like the trip style, is it gonna be food related, history, nightlife, nature, etc. And then we'll say budget as tiers. Yeah, I think I'll just select 3 of them. And then I'm gonna go into the very last question. It says, what does a returning user see on the home screen? So this is how our home screen will look like. Basically, we have a get started button that will take us to the screen. And then we have the latest trip, then some popular destinations. But here in your case, you will not really know what to build initially because this design will be generated by AI in a couple of minutes. So first, what you'd like to say is coming here, selecting the other option, and just say something like, I will provide the UI design later, right? And then we're gonna submit the answers. And then we got the next batch of questions. So here it says Clerk owns the authentication, but Neon also needs the users, right? So in this case, how do we want to implement it? We'll be using webhooks. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to explain in the incoming sections. It's actually a pretty important concept to understand, especially for people who are using AI and vibe coding, right? So webhook is one of those concepts that you must know, and I'll try to explain in a way that every single one of us understand it. For the cover image, I'll be using something like Unsplash. We can also use AI generation, but it's gonna be kind of like paid. I think this is completely fine for the version 1, and this is actually the recommended option. Then here it says what should happen when the generation fails. I'm gonna say ingest should auto retry, then fail gracefully. Then for the trip actions, we can, let me show you the end result actually. What do we want to have? So in the trip details screen, if you press this button, you can delete it, or at the bottom, you can press this AI button and regenerate the itinerary. So here I'm going to say we should be able to view and delete. Maybe edit itinerary with AI, right? Okay, so here I'll actually say, should I select this one? Yeah, let me just go ahead and say other, just to make sure we don't really have any vague answers. I'm gonna say view and delete. I'm also gonna say an AI button, like a chatbot, where user can ask modifications to the current trip. So when you press this button, you will see a UI like this, and you can say, make it more relaxed or more budget friendly, add more local food, so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and submit these answers as well. So we got some more questions about the AI chat feature. Here it says, when a user chats to modify a trip, what does the AI actually do? So in this case, I'm gonna just go with the recommended option. You can read it, but this is really what I'd like to have. Then we'd like to keep this synchronous in the chat, which is also the recommended option. And here I want to say that most of the time, the recommended option is what you'd like to go for. But sometimes it just happens that you want to select a different option. So instead of randomly selecting the recommended, I would say, just take 1 minute and read every single one of the options. Then for the chat history, of course, I want to persist it. Then we can add kind of like a delete button. Let me show you. Like here, user can delete all the previous messages if they really wanted to. For the quota, here I'll just say the other option. I'm gonna say no billing or paywall at all for version 1, so everything will be free. So just imagine, imagine no payments for V1 at all. And then I'm gonna submit my answers. Now here again, we got a really important and actually a good follow-up from Claude. It says, okay, you don't really have any paid plans, but it would be better if you can add kind of like a rate limit daily for user. So in this case, it says at least put some kind of a rate limit, like 20 generations per user per day. Okay, so I'm gonna select this one, and then it says which OpenAI model tier for generation and chat edits. So I'm just gonna use the cheapest one because the goal of this tutorial is not really building the best product out there, but instead having something that works and I can teach you the workflow. I'll go with the cheapest. So like I'll just say use the mini model everywhere. And I think I'm just gonna say submit the answers. Alright, so once you answer every single question, eventually you're gonna get an answer like this by Claude. Like, I have everything that I need. Let me go ahead and write up the full spec and the plan implementation. Now, it's very important for you to not really say yes and auto accept before reading the entire plan. What I would do, I would pause the video, and if I'm building an actual project, I would just maximize the screen and just read the entire plan, because there could be things that you don't really like, especially since you're using AI. Like, there will be definitely something that you don't really like. Maybe it'll be 100% what you want, but I would say it's really important for you to take like 5 to 10 minutes and read, then decide if this is what you'd like to have. In my case, I have already read it off camera, and I found something that I want to let Claude kind of like inform it about this. Okay, so here it is, this one. Like it says, there is something called EAS hosting. By the way, this is the hosting service by Expo. We'll get into that as well. It says hosting a durable ingest endpoint and long-running generation inside Expo router API routes needs validation against version 56 documentation. So here there could be some timeouts. What I'm gonna say, instead of saying yes and auto accept, here I'll say I liked the entire plan. Keep everything as it is, but for the open risk and unknowns, let me just copy it, and I'm going to reference the R1, like the risk one. I'll say we want to use ingest development server. So initially we don't really want to use the EAS hosting for our API routes. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna say. Say we want to use the ingest dev server and not really deploy, let me fix this, deploy something to EAS hosting at the start. Okay, and then I'm gonna say keep this in mind and have my plan as it is. So hopefully this will go ahead and update this part. So here it says, let me update that part in the plan. So after 10 or 15 seconds, it's been implemented. As you can tell, it has updated this part. So I'm going to say yes and auto accept. Now, once you accept that, plan will be approved and Claude will generate a list of to-dos. It'll put everything in different phases. So it's going to start from the very first phase all the way up to the very end one. Now, of course, I don't want to implement everything in the first go. What I'll be doing, I think I'm just going to stop this, which is completely fine. I'm going to say, get this plan and put it into a plan.md file. So at least I can see like what phase that we are currently at. So this is what I'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and say, so we have this plan. I want you to put it under a plan.md file with every single phase, like basically a list of to-dos. And then as we complete any of these features, we will mark them as completed. So for now, don't really implement anything other than building the plan.md file. So here, before you submit that, just go ahead and maybe fix these typos, even though it's not really important, but I'm going to say plan.md. And actually, I'm going to make this to be all uppercase like this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. Now, while this is building the plan.md file, what I'd like to do is creating the .env file from the start. So I'm going to put all kinds of environment variables so that AI can just really implement all of them instead of waiting for us to get the environment variables. And what you would like to do is going under the gitignore file and adding this .env at some point, like just really anywhere, so that this file would be gitignored and we don't really push our secrets to GitHub. And let me give you all the keys and like the values that you would need for your environment variables. Alright, so here are most of the environment variables that you would need. If you don't want to type them out by hand, I created the .env.example file. You can find this in the source code. It is also completely free. Just go ahead, find this file, copy everything, and paste it into your .env file, right? So you don't really need to create this file, but make sure to create the .env file. Then paste everything. Now for the values, I'm going to show you how to grab them. So basically for Clerk, we'll have 3 different values. One for database, one for the AI key. In my case, I'll be using OpenAI, but you can use Gemini, Anthropic, or really anything. And then 2 different keys for Unsplash, one for ingest for the development mode. In production, I'm going to show you what you would need. Then 3 different keys for ImageKit. Now for all these tools, I'm going to provide you some special links in the description. Basically, you're going to get some free credits and free plans without paying anything. So go ahead and sign up starting from Sentry. This will be for, this will be the platform that we will use for error tracking and monitoring in our application. Basically, when your users get some errors, Sentry will immediately send you an email so you can just jump into your code base and fix it immediately before other users encounter the same issue. And this is what I'm using in my actual application as well. Then you need to sign up to Neon to get the free Postgres database. Again, link will be in the description. For now, just go ahead and sign up for these tools. Also for Clerk, we'll get beautiful components. Everything will work out of the box. For background jobs, we'll be using ingest, ImageKit for, image optimizations, and CodeRabbit for the AI code reviews. Okay, once again, go ahead and sign up, get those free credits. Then, we will fill this in the incoming sections. So I think for now, I want to leave it as it is. Here I can say Claude tells me that it has created the plan.md file. Everything is separated with a different phase. And as we build them, I think basically it is going to mark it as completed, just like this, okay? For now, just leave the plan.md as it is. So with that said, I think I want to end this section right here where we went through the plan mode with Claude. We answered all kinds of questions about this project. We created the plan.md file and we created the .env file. And we're gonna fill this in the incoming sections. So I think for now, we can commit our changes. And actually, let's try to push this code to GitHub. What I'll be doing, since this is the very first commit, we don't really need to create a separate branch. But for the incoming sections, we will create a separate branch. Let me actually try to visualize it pretty quickly. Okay, so let's say this is our Git history, right? And we are right here initially. This is the initial commit. But then for every single feature, when we want to implement something, instead of directly committing it, we will create a separate branch. We are going to implement this and we will ask AI to review it first. If it is reviewed, like if everything is done successfully, right? So AI will say, maybe you should add some more features or fix this security issue, right? So we're going to add more commits until we fix it. And once this feature is completed, only then we are going to push it to the actual code, to the main branch, right? So for every single upcoming features, this will be the workflow that we're going to have. Once again, we will create a separate branch, add our commit, ask AI to review it. If it passes, we are going to push it to right here with a pull request. If AI suggests some more changes, then we'll add new commits. And eventually, once it is ready, then we will send the pull request. And this is the workflow that you would follow if you are working in a real company, right? With some teammates. Okay, but for the very first commit, we don't really need to do it. What I'll be doing, I'm gonna go right here. Let me just try to add everything to the staging area. And then I'll just get a commit message with AI. So I'm gonna press this button. It'll generate the commit message. Okay, so you can read it. I'm just going to skip this. I'm gonna say commit, and we'd like to push this code to GitHub. First, I'll go and visit my GitHub account and create a repo. So once you log into GitHub, just say create new repository. For the name, I'm just gonna say Triply AI. You can't really call this anything. Initially, I'm gonna leave it as private, but at the time that you're watching this video, it's gonna be public. And then I'm gonna say create the repository. Now this is gonna give us some 3 different commands where we'd like to copy this and paste it into our terminal. This basically says push an existing repository from the command line. So we have an existing repository in our local machine. We'll open up the terminal. Let's clear this up and I'm going to run this. Like I'll just paste this in. So this will take every single change, like all these files, and push them into this repo. As you can tell, we just got it. Everything is right here. Now, you might be asking, we created the mobile app, but we never run it, which is fine. Like we will have a simulator in the incoming sections and we will actually run it. But as I said, before you write a single line of code and get into the mobile app, first you need to come up with the entire plan. This is the first step of the workflow, because once you have every single spec that is, you decide them and put it under a file, it's going to be very easy to build the app later, right? So I think that's the biggest mistake that I see beginners make. They just want to immediately jump into coding. But dude, you don't really have a plan, right? First, you need to decide everything, like your tech stack, your features, your design. Once you have everything, only then you can jump into coding so AI doesn't really guess anything. This is what we are doing. Hopefully in the next section, we're gonna get into the second step of the workflow. Let's just take a look at it. It's gonna be this one. where we will generate the UI design. Again, I have a bunch of different prompts that I provided. Once we have the UI design, then we will jump into coding with AI and we will build everything step by step. So we'll start with authentication to the home screen, to the AI assistant, so on and so forth. Okay, so with that said, hopefully I'll see you in the next lesson. Alright, so now that we have our plan ready, it is time to get started with the UI design. Now, to be able to generate the design, we are going to be using some AI tools. In my case, I will be using GPT image, but you can use really anything like Gemini or any kind of other models. I would say GPT works really nice and I'm going to show you how to use it as well. But first, here I have a document that I have prepared with at the moment 3 different images and 3 different prompts. Like if you want to get this UI design, then this is going to be the entire prompt. Like you basically design every single screen specifically one by one, then you give the design system, right? Like the typography, color palette, the design style itself, components, and the goal of this app as well. And then you also give the name of the app. So let's just scroll to the bottom. Then we have a recipe app UI prompt. You can take a look at it as well. I'm going to link it in the description. Then we have a dating app UI prompt as well. And then the calorie tracker app, that was the UI that I used for my own actual application. And it looks very, very similar. Not exactly the same, but I would say 90% it is 90% similarities. So you can find this link in the description, and what you would do, just copy one of these prompts, okay? Then you will go into VS Code. Then open up Claude or any kind of other agent really. You're gonna paste that prompt, okay, for any of these apps. Just get one of these prompts and then say, depending on my plan, generate me a prompt similar to this. So here's the entire prompt. You will say generate me a prompt for UI design image generation for my app based on the plan.md file. And this is how we can reference the local files, by the way. You'll just say add and then name of the file. So it's going to give you the prompt and you will copy it, then go into GPT and then you'll just paste the prompt and you will get an image back. What you can do on top of this prompt is maybe say something like the aspect ratio should be 16:9. So you get this horizontal image rather than a vertical one. So that was my first prompt for the recipe app, but in our case, we are going to be using the trip planner app. So I'll be using this image as the reference for design. And then let's say you want to get the background image for the authentication screen, right? How do you get this background image? What I do is basically taking a screenshot of this part and then I go into the next chat. I just say, generate me this background image so I can use it. No text, no logos, nothing. Then I'll get the image. So I can download it, put it into a folder, then use it. What I usually do, creating a folder called design, then I put all these images into it. And since I already have the design, I'll go ahead and copy this image and then just paste it right here. So in your case, what you'd like to do, if you don't really want to use this design, then just go ahead, paste your prompt, get the UI design, and then, just paste it right here. So I'm going to call this app UI design. And like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. So I'm just going to say something like design example or inspiration. Okay, so that's the first thing that we're going to do. And then the other one is getting kind of like a design system. So here, if I just scroll to the bottom, you're going to see something like I said, generate an image of design system for this application that includes colors, font family, components, etc. And this is what I got. So what I'll be doing, I'll just copy this and go right here, then paste this in. I'm going to say design system. Now, later in the video, whenever we want to build our UI, we are going to reference these images so AI can really compare our application to these images and make sure we have the exact same UI. So now that we have the design system as well as the app design, let's say you would like to start with the welcome screen. What I would do is taking a screenshot of this part, okay, and then I would go into my chat. I would say go ahead and upscale this screen. So it's going to upscale it, right? So I have the entire image with high quality. I would copy it, and then right here I would paste and then say something like Auth UI design. Yeah, let's actually get started with the authentication screen. So we'll be using this design to let Claude, to build the exact same UI for us. And for authentication, we are going to be using Clerk, but first let's go ahead and run this app. So in my case, I have a simulator which is open right next to VS Code. If you don't have a simulator, I would highly recommend you to install one. If you're on Mac, you can get iOS. If you're on Windows, you can get Android, which is completely fine. And you can even run this app in your actual phone. But first, let me just show you how you can run it on the simulator. So once you have your simulator open, you will go into VS Code, open up your terminal, and you will say something like npx expo start, or just npx expo. This is going to go ahead and try to run the application. So I'm just going to press I, which stands for the iOS simulator. If you'd like to run it on Android, you will press A. And if you want to even run it on web, you will press W. But in my case, I'll press I. So this is going to go ahead and install the Expo Go application into the simulator and then run this app within that. Now the other option is installing the Expo Go in your actual phone, then scanning this QR code. So it will basically open this app in your actual physical device, but make sure that you're connected to the same Wi-Fi network from both your phone and in your laptop. And in this case, it is trying to run the application. Hopefully we should see something super simple. Like this is the application content. Okay, so here you can tell if you edit the screen and save, it is going to update the UI automatically. Now, of course, this is super simple. We don't really want to have something like this. First, I'll go into Clerk documentation, and I'd like to get Clerk skills, right? So this is what you can do. Just type Clerk skills, and then from here, you would like to basically install some skills for Claude. And if you're wondering what are skills, basically they are installable packages that give AI coding agents specialized knowledge about Clerk. So once it is installed, our agent can help us to add the authentication, manage organizations, sync users, and more. Now, if you don't want to do it manually, you can copy this as Markdown and go into Claude, just say read this and implement me or install me the skills. But in my case, I'm just going to copy the command and not actually here, I'll paste it into a terminal. Now here you can select which skills you would like to install. And in my case, I think I'm just gonna select the core. You press space, by the way, if you want to select anything or deselect anything. So we can just scroll to the bottom and we can get the Clerk Webhooks. We can get the Clerk Expo. I'm just looking at if there is anything we would like to get. Let's say Clerk Expo patterns. Now let's say you don't really want to go this list, right? What I would do, let's actually kill this terminal. I'm gonna go ahead, open this up on Claude, and I'm gonna say, instead of pasting this, I'm just gonna copy this as Markdown, and I'm gonna paste this in, and then I'll say, install the skills that are needed for this project. So Claude will go ahead and read the skills that you just pasted, and then it's going to try to install them, but first it's going to ask for permissions. So here in my case, I'm just going to say, yes, allow this command for all projects, so that in the future it doesn't really ask me the exact same question. And here I'm going to give the permissions. Alright, so after some time, Claude is done with it. It says, here are all the skills that I have installed. It says I skipped the other 17 skills because they don't really apply to this project. Okay, so with that said, if you take a look at the code base, you're going to see that now you have a Claude folder. Within this, you have skills, and within this, you have, skills for Clerk. Later in the video, you can add all kinds of skills. I think we will add some more skills in the incoming sections, but anytime you install a skill, it'll go under this folder under the skills. And we also have this file, which is something that you don't really need to get into. So yeah, now with this in mind, there is another package that we would like to install, which is going to be called as Expo Dev Client. Now you would like to install this package, and let me go ahead and actually show you this. So this is what we call a development build. And you would like to use a development build anytime you want to build a real-world application, because this Expo Go lets you to test simple apps, but if you're building a real application, this is not going to be enough. Okay, so this is just for testing purposes. So when I was building the demo application, I used the development build. Or when I was building my own real-world project, which is bulky AI, I also used a development build, okay? Because some packages, some native modules don't really work with Expo Go. Okay, with this in mind, let's go ahead and ask Claude to install the Expo Dev client. Now you can install it by yourself as well, but really we can just tell Claude to do it because it's something super simple and there is no way that it's going to fail. Basically, it is going to run this command, npx expo install, and then the name of the package. And there is nothing to set up really. Once you install it, then when you run your app, like let's go ahead and kill this. Here it says you need to run your app with this command initially. And then here I'll just say npx expo run iOS. If you're on Windows, you would say Android. So in the first try, it's going to take some time, but then it should be like in the next times, it should be faster. Okay, so while this is installing, we are going to implement the authentication screen. And for this, we will have a workflow. So let me go ahead and show you that. So first off, this is what we have done so far. So we've generated the full UI design, then we upscaled each screen, in this case only authentication, but we're gonna upscale every single one of them in the incoming sections, and then we're gonna build them one by one. Now we are getting started with the authentication screen, which is this one, right? So we have the UI design, we upscale it, now it is time to build it. And here is the workflow. Now you can use Claude, you can use Cursor, you can use anti-gravity, windsurf, it could be really anything. But here we have a built-in verify loop. So first off, we are going to implement the feature or the UI design. Then we will tell Claude to take a screenshot from the simulator and compare it to the design. If it is identical, then it means, if it is identical, it means we can move on to the next feature. But if it is not identical, then just keep going and go through this loop again and again until it is identical. Now, most of the time, it's not going to be 100% identical. Not really, because it's AI, but I would say it is mostly around 80 or 90%. And that's where you can just jump into code and add some modifications or really just be happy with the end result. Okay, so this is the workflow that we'll go through. Once again, we're gonna first try to build the feature with Claude. Then we'll say you should take a screenshot, compare it to design, and go through this until it is identical. Once it is identical, we will go and move on with the next feature, okay? So here, let me just go ahead and visit Claude. And by the way, from my terminal, the development build has failed. I think that's because we don't really have the Sentry set up yet. We're gonna get into it in a second, but before we do so, let me just go ahead and try to show you a different prompt. So for this workflow, let me show you this. So for this workflow, I have an extra prompt. Again, I'm going to link it in the description. So you can basically copy it, then paste it into Claude. Now we'll get into it in a second. There is one more package that I'd like to install, which is going to be Native Wind. Basically, this is a Tailwind, but for React Native. And let's say get started. At the time that I'm recording this video, the version 5 is in the pre-release. So I think version 4 is more stable. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this entire file, paste it into Claude, and I'm going to say, so on top of documentation, this is what I have just added. You can pause the video and read it. Basically, I said this is the documentation for Native Wind. I want you to go ahead and read the entire documentation from start until the end, step by step, and implement it correctly in my codebase. And then double check if it is set it up correctly. So here you can tell Claude is trying to set this up with a list of to-dos. And while this is building it, let's go ahead and try to set up Sentry in our project. So for this, head over and log into your Sentry account. Then select projects. From here, we will create a new project. So in my case, I already have a bunch of different previous projects, but if you don't have any, that's completely fine. We will start from absolute scratch. Now you have the first option as the platform. In our case, we are building a React Native application, so we're going to select this SDK. Then you can set your alert frequency. You can, really customize it. As you can tell, there are a bunch of different options, but I'm going to leave it as default. Then, by default, you'll be notified via email. But if you want to set this up, you can really set it up on Slack, Discord, and even Microsoft Teams. Now let's create a project slug. In my case, I think I'm just going to call it as Triply tutorial. You can call this anything. Select your team or organization. I will leave it by default, which is this one. And then I'm going to say create the project. Now, once you create the project, you're going to get this, what we call it as, let me zoom in so you can see it clearly. Okay, so let me try to zoom in maybe from here. So here we have what we call the Sentry wizard. Basically, it is a CLI tool that automatically sets up Sentry in your project. You can copy this and paste it manually to your code base, or you can just copy the instructions. So this is the beauty of AI age. Basically, on every single documentation, we have this button, so we can just copy all the instructions and paste it to our LLM. So in my case, let me go ahead, copy it, give it the access, by the way, from a different tab. We can paste this in and we can just say set up Sentry in my project. And this is the documentation. I just paste it above. Alright, so after a couple of seconds, here I can see that Sentry has been set it up, even though there is something that we need to add, which is the authentication token. I'm going to get into that in a second. But the other thing is the native wind setup. So this has also been implemented successfully. And here you can tell it is actually working. If you visit the index.ts app, we are using class name, which are coming from Tailwind, and it is already working. Now, in my case, something has failed when I tried to build my app with npx expo run iOS. So I just got this error, right? So I have copied it with a different tab. I just said, this is the error that I got. Let me show you the prompt. So I said, I get this error when running npx expo run iOS. What is wrong? Let me know and also fix the issue. So if you're interested, you should always ask, what is wrong? Let me know, but also try to fix it. So next time when you get this error, you can automatically know why this is happening. Okay, so with this in mind, now we need to get the Sentry Auth token. So basically you will go into your Sentry dashboard and from the search, you can just say Auth token. And we're going to get into the organization tokens. In my case, I have a bunch of them, but let's create one from scratch. You can give it a name. In this case, I'll just say triply tutorial, create the token. Now, once you create it, you will only see this once, right? So copy it and paste it into your terminal. Sorry, not terminal, but .env file. Let's go ahead. In our case, we have .env, and I think Sentry Wizard created the .env local file. So instead of putting it here, I'm gonna just put it under the .env. So I'm gonna paste the value. I'm not gonna show you that part. Basically, I'll pause the video, but what I'll be doing is basically cut it from here, paste it right here, and then I'll just get my token from Sentry dashboard. Alright, so I have just pasted that Auth token into the .env file. Now next, we will go ahead and get the background image for the authentication screen. As you already know, I said go ahead and generate this background image so I can use it in my app. I'll copy this image, go under the design, I'll paste this in, and maybe I'll say something like Auth screen background image.png. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get this prompt. Let me get it from the Google Docs. I'm gonna copy it. So this is basically the prompt that will put Claude into this loop. Maybe I can close this chat and create a new one. In here, I would like to, reference the auth design.png file. Okay, so you can read the entire prompt. Basically, like this is what we say, right? And if you're interested, you can read it from start until the end. Okay, so here I will also make sure that this is referenced. Now, just before we run this, there are two different things that I'd like to talk about, which are agents.md and claude.md file. Now, I'll just keep this chat open. So let's close the other ones. I'll just keep this open, but we will get into this in a couple of minutes. First, I'd like to talk about claude.md and agents.md because I want to set one of these files. So here, let's go back into the diagrams and let's just first ask what they are. So both are plain markdown instruction files that get auto-loaded into the AI's context at the start of a session. So here, when you go ahead and talk with Claude, first, what Claude does is reading these files, right? First, it gets the context, and then it reads what you have added on top of it. So they are where you put project conventions, architecture notes, things like always do X, never do Y rules, etc. The difference is just who reads them. So Claude.md is built specifically for Claude Code, but agents.md is, agent agnostic. So basically, all other AI coding tools can read it. That could be Cursor, GitHub Copilot, Codex, Gemini CLI, and even Claude Code itself. So you might be asking then, which one should we use with Claude? Well, we can just go with agents.md, and in claude.md we can just make one reference to this file. And I think this is how it is set it up at the moment. If you take a look at the agents.md, we have something like Expo has changed. Read the documentation. This is coming from Expo. We didn't really type this out by hand, but here under the claude.md, there is a reference to the agents.md file. So basically it says to Claude, you should read the agents.md file for this, initial instructions. So in my case, I would like to build the agents.md where I'd like to add my tech stack. On top of it, there is something called native tabs. So I'd like to just add it as a rule. I'll basically say every single time you should use the native tabs. And if you don't know already, native tabs are the feature that will allow us to have this iOS liquid glass effect. You can take a look at the documentation if you're interested, but we'll get into it in the incoming sections. First, what I'd like to do is building the file content for agents.md file. Now you might be asking, I don't know how to build this file. Like, I don't know what to put inside. What should be the content? Well, you can just go to Claude and say, depending on my project, what should I have in agents.md file? Like, should we have the tech stack? I want to use native tabs all the time. Should I include it? Things like that, right? just let me know. This is exactly what I have done, and it says what your project actually is. And then it is going to propose me an agents.md file. So we already had this part. On top of it, it adds the tech stack like Expo, React Native, Expo Router, Sentry, so on and so forth. And I think on top of it, we can say for database, we are using Neon. For ORM, we are using Drizzle, ingest for background jobs, Clerk for authentication, ImageKit for image optimizations, so on and so forth. I'm gonna get into it. Then here we have some conventions. Like for styling, we are using class name and not really inline styles. So I think I'm pretty happy with what I have at the moment. I'm gonna say on top of this, let me just talk with Claude. Okay, so on top of this, I want you to update the tech stack part. So we want to use Postgres database coming from Neon, and we would like to use Drizzle as our ORM. And we are using, let's say, we are using ImageKit for image optimizations. We are using Clerk for authentication. We are using ingest for background jobs and Sentry for error tracking and monitoring. And also, other than tech stack, I always want to use native tabs. So I don't really want to use JavaScript tabs. This project should always have native tabs. With this in mind, go ahead and build the agents.md file. Okay, so there are a couple of different typos. Let me go ahead and fix them. So this should be agents.md file. Let's read it from start until the end. Here this should be Drizzle. So we have ImageKit, Clerk. This should be ingest. Okay, we have Sentry, and I think the rest is correct. Now, once you create the agents.md, anytime in the future, you can update it, right? It is not like you will create it once and forget it completely. Well, not really. You create it once, and as you have more rules, or you have updated your tech stack, let's say, then you would just go ahead and add it into the agents.md file. Now, one of the other things that I want to add, I just realized, basically, I will tell Claude to never run my application because I am already running it with a separate terminal, right? So I never want Claude to start a new session. Now, I also want you to add this prompt or this, instruction to the agents.md where basically you should never ever run the application by yourself because I am already running it in a separate terminal. Okay, so this is not the best prompt, but I think it should work out. And here you can tell it has added this line. It says, never run the application by yourself. Okay, so that's the general idea of Claude.md and agents.md file. Basically, you build one of them. In this case, it is best to build agents.md because it is really like agent agnostic. You can use Codex, Gemini, Claude, doesn't really matter. And if you're using Claude, just go ahead, reference it with this one single line. It will basically read this file content. Okay, so with this in mind, now we can close this, and this is where we left. I will go ahead and run this. And let me just, at the very end, I want to say something like, use the Auth screen background image. So I'll just reference this file. I'll say use this as the demo image for Auth screen, just like in the design file. Alright, so this is what Claude came up with the very first try. Now, it looks like this is not really identical, so it's gonna go ahead and do this part again, right? And probably it's gonna take a couple of times until we get there. So I'll just go ahead and give the permissions and let's see how this will end up. Alright, so as you can tell, it just keeps getting better. And here it says, like, it just gives a kind of like feedback to itself. It says the screen rendered, but the button backgrounds and layout are missing. So like it just gives itself a feedback. Now we're just trying to build it and just make sure that it looks like the end result. So here is another feedback that Claude gives itself after taking a look at the screenshot. So basically this was 3 lines. So here it says it is wrapping to 3 lines. Let me go ahead and make sure that it is only 2 lines, just like in the end result. So now it's been fixed as well, but I think this is still like keep going. Alright, so this has been completed. As you can tell, it is very similar. Now, as I said before, you're not going to get 100% identical end result, but as you can tell, it's very similar. Now, what I'd like to do is actually getting rid of this kind of like description or this small text and get rid of the email option. So it is just my preference. If you wanted to, you can still keep it, but I'll just go ahead and say, from the authentication screen, I want to remove the email option. So there should be only 2 buttons, which are Google and Apple. Leave them as they are, but remove the email button, and also remove the text that says let AI build the perfect trip for you. Alright, so looks like this has also been implemented. We get rid of the email button as well as the text. Now, I think I'm pretty happy with this end result, but if I was building it as a real project, I would ask for some more modifications. But since this is a tutorial, I don't really want to waste 2 more hours just to make this authentication screen look better. I'm just trying to show you the workflow, which is kind of like putting this AI into loop until we get the identical end result. And I think what we have is already looking pretty great. Okay, so with that in mind, now we can go ahead and ask Claude to implement the Google and Apple authentications, or when we press them, it should work out. So for this, first off, we need to visit Clerk dashboard, go ahead and log in, and then press the create application button, or visit this endpoint or this URL. And then here, let's give it a name. I'll just call it as a Triply tutorial. And then for the options, I'm going to disable email. I'm going to include Google and GitHub. Now, if you wanted to, you can add more options, and actually not GitHub. Wait, it should be Apple. If you wanted to, you can add more options, but if you're on the free plan, you can only get 3 providers for free. In our case, 2 is enough, like Google and Apple. I'll just give it a name, and then I'll say create the application. Okay, so again, here you will get the instructions for your AI, agent. Here, I'll just copy the prompt. I think this is just for testing purposes, right? This is going to set this up without your environment variables. But instead of doing it in this way, let's actually go ahead and visit the quick start documentation. Let's select Expo. And then from here, I'll just get my environment variables. So from here, select your application, okay? So just copy it, go into .env and paste that in. I'm gonna pause the video, but I will basically add it right here. Okay, so I have added that value into my .env file. Now I'll just go ahead and copy this entire file. Or actually, we don't really need to because we have these skills. So I'm just gonna say, I have the environment variables for Clerk. I want you to go ahead and implement Google and Apple authentication in my codebase. Make sure to read the skills so you don't really make any mistakes, and you should follow the skills since they are the official documentation. Alright, so looks like Claude has implemented it. I'll go ahead and test out both of these options, starting with Google. Now here I have already logged in with a different account in this simulator in the past. That's why I can see this account. But if you have never logged in, then this will be the UI that you're gonna see. So go ahead and put your email and password, then you will be able to log in. So I'll just try to select this account and I'll say continue. Okay, so here we can tell we are redirected to the home screen where user is authenticated. We can see the first name as well as the email. Now we also have a sign up button. Let's test this out. If I press that, now we are redirected to the authentication screen. And you can double check if everything is working by going into Clerk dashboard, select your project, and under the overview, you're gonna see this user, which is the signed up account. So that means everything is working end to end. You can also test out the Apple option. In this case, I'm not gonna be doing it, but I'm pretty sure that this is already working. Here you can tell, you'll just put your email, in this case, your probably iCloud account, then your password, then you should be logging in, right? You should be logged in. But in this case, I'll just skip that. Like, I'm pretty sure that it is already working because they both use the same method, which is use SSO hook, okay? So everything is coming from the Claude skills, like from Clerk skills. So just in case if it fails, you can always add a follow-up, like take a screenshot, put it into Claude and say, you know, Google authentication is already working, but I don't know what is wrong with Apple. Then it should be able to fix it for you. Okay, so with this, I think I'm pretty happy with the authentication section. Like everything is working. I like the UI, and I think it is time to kind of like commit our changes. Now, if you remember in our workflow, once we build a feature, first we'd like to test out manually, which is what we have just done. But after that, we'd like to run an AI code review so that it can fix any kind of issues if we have. And if we don't really have any issues, we are going to save the progress and go to the next feature. But if you have kind of like an issue or problem, then we're going to go through this loop. Okay, now it is time to implement this one. So for this, we will go into VS Code. Let me go actually, yeah, I'll just kill the Claude instance and let me shrink everything. I'm gonna press Command-Shift-P and get the status bar visibility. Now let me maximize the screen. From here, I would like to create a new branch, okay? So I'm gonna say create new branch. For the name, I think I can just say Authentication. So this branch has been created. And from here, we would like to add everything to the staging area. So here I'm going to say stage everything. Let's get a commit message. So AI will generate the message. And while this is generating, let me try to visualize what we are doing. So basically, like this is our commit history, right? And we were right here. Then we just created a new branch, like we added a new feature, but instead of committing it right here, what we have done is creating a new branch. And here we'll try to run a code review. If it passes, only then we are going to merge this pull request. Okay, so this is exactly what we are doing. We'll say commit this and publish this branch. And then if you go into source code, let's actually visit that. This was called Triply AI. You're going to see something like there is a pull request. So we'll say compare and create the pull request. Alright, so after a couple of seconds, you're going to see something like CodeRabbit is trying to review your code or the pull request that you just created. This is at least what I see in my case. If you cannot see something like this, that means you don't really have CodeRabbit set it up in your project. So what we'd like to do is going into CodeRabbit.ai. I'm going to leave the link in the description. You can get a free plan and then we'll try to log in. So in my case, I'll go ahead and sign up or log in with my GitHub account. So once you're logged in, you will be in the CodeRabbit dashboard. From here, select the repositories and then press this button where you can add the current repository to the list. What this does is basically it says to CodeRabbit, hey, I give you the access where you can give me a code review in this specific repo, okay? And once you have done this, in your next pull requests, you're gonna get a code review from CodeRabbit automatically. So initially, like this is gonna take a couple of minutes because currently what is happening is that CodeRabbit goes through every single file that you just have as a change, right? Like in our case, we have 43 different files that has been changed. So CodeRabbit will kind of like scan it and run a bunch of different audits on it so that it can give us a feedback. Once it is done, I'll just be right back. And here you can tell we also have a summary by CodeRabbit, which is really, really cool if you're working with a team. So all of your teammates can just go into this specific pull request and then see what you have done in this specific commit. Alright, so after a couple of minutes, you're gonna get the suggestions and comments from CodeRabbit. Now we can scroll through it and see every single change or the suggestion really. But in this case, I can see it says something related to skills, which is something that I wouldn't really update. Because if you remember, we didn't really build the skills by hand or with AI. These are the things that we just got from Clerk documentation, right? So these are the things that I wouldn't really update. So in this case, I'm just going to skip them. Let's find a file that is, that is one of the files that we actually built, like global.css. Here it says, here is my fix. If you don't want to type it out by hand, you can basically get the prompt for AI agents. So I'm gonna skip this, but let's find a different issue, like under the layout file, which is related to Sentry. Here it says, verify each finding against current code. Fix only still valid issues. Skip the rest with a brief reason. Okay, so I think I'm going to skip this. Let's just find something that I actually want to update. Okay, so I think this is something that I want to copy and just show you how would I fix it with Claude. So here you can tell some of the values are 0.1 and some of the values are 1.0. So basically in production, these values should not be 1.0. This is only for development. Here it says capture all traces in development, but tune this down in production. So I'm gonna copy this and paste it into Claude. Maybe it can run some kind of an if check and it would make this value to be conditional. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and paste this in. And by the way, I have the plan.md file open. I'll get into it in a second. For now, let's try to run it and let's just see what's gonna happen. So just like what I have explained, Claude has added this conditional check, and depending on the environment, it's going to update this value. So this is how we can run a code review and find some actual issues in your code base. So initially, before using CodeRabbit, Claude Code was not really able to find this issue, right? So like you have to tell it manually. And that's the beauty of using CodeRabbit. So in this case, what I'll be doing, like this has already been implemented, so we just need to add this as a commit. So I'm gonna say stage this, get a commit message, then we are going to commit this. Notice how it is still under the same branch. And then we'll just say sync this up, basically take this change and send it into this pull request. So initially we had only one commit. If I reload now, we should have two commits, as you can tell. Okay, so I'm not gonna go and read every single one of these because this is a tutorial. I don't really want to make this to be something like 10 hours, but you get the point. Anytime you find a major issue or even for minor issues, you would just get the prompt and go into Claude, fix it, then commit the change. And eventually you'll just scroll to the bottom and you will say merge this pull request. And I'm just gonna say confirm this merge. Okay, so it has been merged successfully. Now we can go into our code base and we can switch to the master branch. And then we'll just press this button. Like before I press that, notice how we have the old version. So once you press this, it's gonna get the latest changes and put it into your code base. Okay, so with that said, there is one more thing before I end this section. Basically, in our plan.md, we have built some of these features, but we don't really updated this file at all. So for now, we have implemented some part of Auth, and some part of it is missing. And let me try to explain, and then we'll get into this file in a second. Sorry. Okay, so here we have the user who just signed up via Clerk, and this user is stored in the Clerk dashboard. But we will also have a database, right? So how do we take the user and save it into the database as well, right? Because otherwise it would only be here. Well, the solution for this is webhooks. Now, if you don't know already what webhooks are, let me try to explain and visualize it. So they are some automated messages that are sent when something happens. And in this case, that something is when a user created or a user account deleted. So basically, user will sign up with Clerk and that user account will be saved in Clerk dashboard. But we also want to take it and save it to our database. So we're going to set this up with Webhooks. Basically, Clerk will say, hey, here's an event where a user just been created, right? So it is called user.created or a user account has been deleted. And we also have user.updated. So we're gonna listen for all these events, and depending on the event, we will either create the user in the database or delete them or update them, okay? So I hope this gives you kind of like an idea. I know that this is not the best explanation, but we're gonna get there. For now, I just want you to understand that webhooks are some automated messages that are sent when something happens. And here's the workflow that we're going to set up to sync the user from Clerk to Neon. Now we will get into it in the incoming sections, but for now let me just pretty quickly go over it. So we have the user who is going to sign up with Clerk, and Clerk will send an event to our API route. And then once we verify this, ingest is going to run a background job. So we can call this really anything. In my case, I call it as sync user, and this will run a simple mutation that will take the user and upsert it or insert it to our database. Now with that said, let's go ahead and try to update our plan.md file by talking to Claude. So in my plan.md file, in phase 0 and in phase 1, there are some stuff that we have already implemented, but we didn't really update that part in the plan.md file. So I want you to go ahead and update those parts. So basically, we already implemented the authentication for Google and Apple. We put them under a single page, which is I'm currently happy with. It is under the Auth screen. And by the way, this is the screen that I'm talking about. So here I'll just go ahead and continue. Now, when it comes to the environment variables, just assume that I have already set them up. So we have all the values in the .env file. And yeah, so with this in mind, go ahead and update the plan.md file. I will implement the user synchronization with ingest in the incoming minutes. So for now, just don't really update it. Don't really update that part. Alright, so Claude has marked the things that we have already implemented. So for now, I think we can commit this file or leave it as it is. In this case, I'll just make sure that I am under the master branch. I don't really need to create a separate pull request for this. I'll just create a commit message and commit this into the master. Because for this, there is nothing to really review. Here, I'll just say sync this up. Okay, so that was it for this section. Hopefully in the next one, we are going to handle the user synchronization with ingest and Clerk webhooks. Alright, so now it is time to get started with the user synchronization. So this is something that we talked in the past. Basically, we are going to get the user from Clerk and save it to our database. And it sounds kind of like complicated, but I'm just going to show you the workflow. It's actually easier than you think. There are just a couple of different steps that we need to follow step by step. Okay, so first off, I want to show you a couple of different tools. So the first one is going to be ngrok. We will be using it. It's completely free to get started with. So this will basically give us a production ready URL for our API. So as if we are not running it in development, but as if it is running on production. And you're going to see why we will need it. Then on top of this, we have Context 7, which is one of the best tools really out there. So this is going to give our AI agent or the LLM up-to-date documentation. So here there are basically all kinds of documentations for any kind of tool, and it is always getting updated. And if you don't know how to set it up, like you can just go into Claude, open up a new chat, or if you're using Cursor, Gemini, really anything, just say, I want you to set up me Context 7. Okay, so just say Context 7 by Upstash. Just say like, I want you to set it up. in my laptop for every single project. It is just going to set it up. It is pretty simple. And in my case, I already have this set it up. So I'll show you how to use it as well. Basically, you put your prompt and at the very end, you just say use context 7. And this will just read the documentation for the tool that you're using. So it's going to get the up-to-date documentation. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so with this in mind, let's try to kind of like paste a prompt so that Claude can implement this workflow. I have already prepared the prompt and you can find it under this file, and I already linked this in the description. So just go ahead and copy this part. And I want you to pause the video and read this part. Let me just paste it right here. And I'll just maximize the screen. So here I basically say this is your task, and just imagine as if I have the database URL, but I actually don't have it. Like, I didn't really set this up. It is equal to undefined. So we will go ahead and get the database URL from our Neon dashboard. So once you are logged in, go ahead and create a new project, and you can find the link in the description, by the way. Here I'll just say project name could be Triply tutorial. So in my case, I already have one called Triply dev. This is for testing purposes, but this will be the production one. Okay, so I'll just say Triply tutorial, and then I'll just say create the project. Then we can go under the connect. Let me find it. Okay, so just press this button, and under the .env, copy this value without the quotes. Okay, only get the value, don't include the quotes. Just copy it and paste it into your .env file. I'll pause the video and paste this in, and then I'll just be right back. So I have just pasted that value into my .env file, and then here I say for ingest, we're going to be using the development mode for now. So don't really think about the production key, because initially I just want to make this feature work. Once I'm ready to go into production, only then I can implement this part, which will be a lot more convenient. And then at the very end, I say for the webhook URL, I'll be using ngrok, and I'm gonna provide it to you in a couple of minutes, right? When it is needed. So with this in mind, I'll go ahead and run this. Now, while this is creating it in the background, we'll go into the Clerk dashboard. Under the configure, make sure that you select your project, by the way. Under the developers, you will press to the webhooks link. And then here we will add an endpoint. So here I'll just press this button, and here you can tell it says you need to put an actual URL, right? And we are going to get this URL from ngrok. So in the free plan, they give you one URL that you can use. So we'll just say login. I already have a project. So in my case, sorry, I already have an account. In my case, I'll go under the domains and I'll try to copy this one. Okay, let me actually just go back. Under the endpoints, I'll try to copy it, and then I'll just go right here, paste this in, and at the very end, I'm gonna have /API /webhooks/clerk. So this is the kind of like convention. You can't really put anything here, but this indicates that we are gonna have it under our Clerk webhook API endpoint. And then when it comes to the events that we will be subscribing to, it'll be related to user. So user.created, deleted, and updated. Remember that these are the events that I just told previously, okay? So we'll just listen for them, and then we'll say create the endpoint. Then here we will get a signing secret. So I'd like to copy this value, and then we will paste it into .env file. So if you take a look at the .env example, we have Clerk webhook sign-in secret. So it is this key. Now I'll just paste it into my .env file, and then I'll just be right back. Also, I'll give the permission to Claude. Now, while this is getting implemented, we can go ahead and visit our ingest dashboard. Once again, I'll leave the link in the description. You would like to basically go ahead and sign in. In my case, I believe I have already signed in. So let me just wait for this to load the dashboard. In production, you are going to need two different keys. So first, let me try to sign in with my GitHub account. But in development, you don't really need a key. Here, let's try to find the key section. So you have a sign-in key and an event key. You would like to copy these values and put it into your .env file. So here, let's go under the .env example file. Like in development, you need to have this file, this value. So just copy it and paste it under the .env. But in production, you would need something like ingest, let's say sign-in underscore key, and you'll have your value coming from the dashboard. And then you would like to also have the event key. So here I'll just say ingest underscore event key. And then again, you would get this value from the dashboard. So in our case, since we are just trying to build this app in development, we don't really need them at the moment, but I'll just leave it under the .env.example file. Alright, so it looks like Claude is done with it, and now it is time to test this out. And here are the things that we need to do step by step. And by the way, here I just followed up. I said, is it done yet? Because in my case, it took around like 10 minutes. I think my internet connection was pretty slow. So it was installing a bunch of different packages, and yeah, that was the follow-up I have done. Okay, so with this, let's try to test this out. It says you need to start the ingest server. So I'm gonna copy it and I'll go into my terminal. So I'm gonna copy this prompt, which is like npm run ingest or the command, and I'm going to run it. So this is going to run the ingest dev server in our local machine. And by the way, in my case, in the database, Claude has created the users table with all these fields. So in your case, probably you will have the exact same stuff so that we can take the user from Clerk and save it into our database. So here I'll just press enter, and then I'm gonna copy this URL. Once it is started, we can visit it in our web browser. So I think it's gonna be this one. I'll just copy it, go right here, and then I will paste this in. Hopefully we shouldn't really have any errors, but looks like I have one. Let's see what's the problem. So I have just paused the video and tried to find the solution, and turns out all you need to do is basically restarting your Expo application. So just go ahead, stop your terminal, and then run npx expo start with the clear flag. So this is going to basically clear the cache, and then everything should work out. In the second terminal, make sure to have ingest up and running. Okay, so basically now we have a method where we can create the user, and you can press this view functions button, and then you'll be able to see the methods that you have. So what I'll be doing, I'll go into Clerk under the users. I'm going to delete this user, and then we'll try to sign up from scratch. So once we sign up, Clerk will send the user created event, right? So just like here, once we sign up, this event will be fired, and then ingest will try to save the user to our database. Okay, so let's just put them side by side. We don't really have any users, not in the database, and not even in the Clerk dashboard. Let's try to sign up. Okay, so I think the sign up process is done on Clerk side. We should be able to see the user right here. And then if we go into our database and reload it, under the users table, as you can tell, we can see that this user has been also created. So that means this workflow that we just set it up is working correctly. Now we can jump into coding and really read every single line of code that AI has generated. But as you already know, the point of this course is showing you all the workflows that you would need in your future projects. So I'm not going to go ahead and, walk you through every single file, but instead I'll just share the workflow with you. Now what I'll be doing, I'll just open up a new Claude chat, and then I'm going to say, on top of this user created event, I want you to handle the user updated and user deleted events, right? Because like what happens if you delete the user from Clerk dashboard? We want this account to be deleted from the users table as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead, maybe maximize this. So in my project, I have already implemented ingest by creating the user. So basically when user signs up with Clerk, we are taking that user and saving it into our database. In the exact same way, I want you to implement the user deletion and the user.updated event. So go ahead and implement it and then update the plan.md file. So basically I want you to mark the things that we done as completed. Okay, so this is my prompt. Again, not the best prompt, not the best English grammar, but I think that's fine. Claude will be able to understand it. And I'll just be right back once this is done, then we will test this out. So looks like this has also been implemented. So let's go ahead and test this out. I'll visit my Clerk dashboard and I'll try to delete the user. And actually before we delete it, let's go into our ingest server or the development server. Under the functions, if you reload, you're going to see that we got two different methods. And anytime they run, you'll be able to see them under the runs section. So previously, the user.created run. Now let's try to delete this user. So once this user deleted from Clerk, we will have a new run, as you can tell, running, and now it's completed. That means this user is also deleted from the database. If you reload, you're going to see that it is gone. So with that said, I'm not going to test out the update endpoint, which is this one, but I'm pretty sure it is also working. And if you're interested in the code part, basically it is right here under the functions. We have three different methods. So this is to create the user, this is to update it, and this is for the deletion. I think later in the video, we are going to test out the user update method. So I'll just leave it for the incoming sections to test this out. So I think we are almost done with this section. Just before we end it, I'll just go into Claude and then I'll say, check the plan.md file and see if we have anything implemented but we forgot to mark it as completed. If there are any, you should mark those as completed. So it turns out there were 6 different things that we have already done with, but we didn't really mark it as completed. This is what Claude has implemented, and I think this is a nice way to keep track of the features that you have already implemented. That's why in my workflow, I always just let Claude to, mark the things that I am already done with. Okay, so with this, I think we can create a new branch and commit our changes. So I'll just say Command-Shift-P. Instead of saying reload the window, I should say toggle status bar visibility. So what is going on? Let me just close this. I'll say don't save. Okay, from here, I'll try to create a new branch. For the name, I think we can just say Auth DB sync. And then let's try to commit everything. So that's my commit message. I'll say publish this branch, then we'll go into our code base or the repository. Then we will create the pull request. Like here you can see all the changes that we have done in this pull request. So we have like 12,000 lines, which is insane. And we have deleted 7 lines in this pull request. So as you can imagine, it's going to take some time for CodeRabbit to analyze it and come up with a review. So here you should be, patient and just wait for the suggestions that will be coming from CodeRabbit. Once we got them, I'll just be right back. So after some time, as usual, we got the summary of this pull request that you can take a look at. And we also have the walkthrough with every single file that has been updated and, the changes, kind of like a summary. Then you even have like a sequence diagram. You can take a look at them, but I'll just try to see the suggestions that I have. So I think I can shrink this. And there is also this feature where it says review the change stack. So you can press that. This will take you to the, change stack and you can kind of see the changes side by side. Now at the time that I'm recording this video, this feature is in preview. They are actively improving it. You can give it a feedback after testing this out. Basically, you have all the files, like previously we didn't have it, but with this pull request, this is the change that we have done. Like we have added this file. Same for the DB index file. And you can scroll through it and see every single change that you have in this pull request. You can see everything under the files, or if you're interested in layers, you can select the layers. So with this, I'll just go back to my pull request. I think I cannot go in this way. I'll just find the repo itself under the pull requests. So this is the current one that we had. And I'll just scroll to the bottom. I'll try to find the suggestions. So this is a minor one. It says maybe you should add the actual value to the .env file instead of putting the without any values. But since we are not going to deploy this app to the App Store, I think it is completely fine to leave it in the development. And then let's scroll to the bottom. Here it says you can maybe update this Clerk API endpoint. It is minor, so I'm going to skip this as well. Then we have a major suggestion, or like a, let me zoom in, like a major problem that we need to fix. It says don't really put the isDev as hard-coded, but as I said, we are not going to deploy this, so I'll just leave it as true. But if you wanted to, like you can copy the prompt and go into Claude, just ask it to implement it for you. This is something that we have done in the past, but for now, I'll just say merge the pull request. Let's confirm the merge. Once this is done successfully, I'll go back into VS Code. Let's switch into the master branch, and then I'll just press this button to sync this up. Okay, so with this, now we have authentication and synchronization working successfully. In the next section, we can get started with the actual home screen, and we're gonna have our native tabs. So in total, we will have 4 different tabs, which are home, assistant, trips, and profile. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Alright, so this is where we left. In this section, we are going to get started with the native tabs. So we're going to basically update this home screen that we currently see. And off camera, I have got a bunch of different images. Let me show you them. If you wanted to, you can grab them from the source code. And I'll show you how I generated all these images step by step. Okay, so first off, let's say, like, I just want to show you a trick. Let's say from the app UI design, I like one of these screens. Let's say this one, but I want to see a different variation of it. Like I like this one, but not entirely. So I would take a screenshot and then I would go into GPT. Then I would say, generate me a grid of 9 images of different UI for this screen. So, and I would just say like improve it. And then I would get 9 different variations of it. So let me try to maximize it. Like, I don't know why it doesn't maximize, but here we go. So we got 9 different variations. And from one of them, you're gonna like one of them, right? So in this case, I like this one. I take this screenshot and then I said, generate me this background image so that I can use it. And here you can tell I got the image, but then I also said make the background to be transparent so I can use it in my application. And here is that image. So basically we are going to be using it on the trip loading screen. So this is how I create different variations for different screens, and then I pick one that I like. So I think I've did it for the trip detail page as well. This is what I have built initially, but I didn't really like it, like something is off right here. So I took the screenshot and then I said like do the same thing. And then here I got 9 different variations. It is this one. So from here, I just selected this one. I think I like this more, even though this one is also looking really nice. Yeah, so I just said like upscale the 6th one, which is this one. And then I took this image, pasted it into my design folder, and then I asked Claude to go through that loop until I get the exact same end result. So in your case, you can follow along with this exact same style, but in my case, I'll have it a little bit different. Like this will be the assistant UI. This is going to be the home screen UI and, profile screen as well as the trips screen. Then I also have this world image. Again, let me show you how I generated that. Basically here I said give me 6 different variations or even 9. Initially this is how it would look like. And then from one of them I selected this one. I said, upscale it. So you got the point at this point. Yeah, I would just grab the images so that I can use them in my code base. So here eventually GPT give me this one, and then I paste it into Claude, and then I go through and try to build this, build this UI. So this is what we'll try to do. Here I'll go ahead and open up a new Claude instance, and we would like to use native tabs. For this, I'll go ahead and open up the native tabs documentation from Expo. So I will basically copy the entire page just to give it as a context to the Claude. And then I'll say, go ahead and implement me the native tabs on in my application. So here's my prompt. I just talked with the Claude. I said I have just pasted the documentation of native tabs, which is right here. So I pasted below to it. And then I said, go ahead and implement it in my application. I want to have 4 different tabs, which are home, assistant, trips, and profile. And then I said we would like to get started with the home screen UI design. And then I said, first we'd like to build the UI, not really any functionality. Later we will make it actually work. And I said for the UI design, you can, take a look at this image, which is this one. So I have referenced it. And I also said you can use the world.png. And then I also said put yourself into that previous loop that we have done. Basically, it's going to take a screenshot from the simulator and then compare it to the design until it is identical, right? So I'll go ahead and run this, and I'll just be right back once this is done. And actually, while this is getting generated, I have a logo.png as well as the AI logo. And let me show you how I have created them. Basically, within the same chat, I say generate a grid of 9 logos for this application. But I didn't really like this kind of like plain, so I just said something different than this one. Then here are some other options, and then I said maybe a world icon because I didn't really like any of them. And from here I like this one, so I take this screenshot. I said upscale this without the text and it should be transparent background. So this is exactly what I have done. I copied the image, pasted it into my code base, and then I did the exact same thing for, like here I said generate a grid of icons for this AI button at the bottom. It'll be like a chatbot. And from here, I like this one. You know the trick already. You take the screenshot and say upscale this for me without any transparent background. Alright, so here you can tell this is the very first variation that we got from Claude. It looks almost identical to what we have in the screenshots. But here I think I need to follow up. Once this is completed, I'll say take this image and put it on the very right hand side, but I think it is already doing it. Like it is taking the screenshot from simulator and then it is comparing it to the, to this page or to this file. So as you can tell, we are getting there. First off, it kind of like give the spacing. Now I believe at this point, it is going to make it a bit larger and put it on the right hand side. Okay, so as you can tell, Claude is done with it. Even though it is not 100% identical, I'm still very, very happy with what it came up with. So first off, I'm going to have 2 different follow-ups for the improvements. The first one, I'd like to take this image, make it a bit larger and put it on the right-hand side. And the other one is giving some extra spaces when I scroll so that this doesn't really overlap with the images, right? So I'm going to go ahead and explain this to Claude. So overall, I like the home screen UI design, but I will ask for 2 different improvements. I want you to take the world.png and make it a bit larger and put it on the right hand side. So it should be sticky to the right hand side of the blue box. And at the very end of this page, in the home screen, when we scroll, there should be some extra spacing so that the native tabs are not really overlapping with the popular destination images. So here I follow up a couple of different times. Eventually the image is bigger, but now it cannot really push it to the right hand side. So this is where you'd like to jump into code and fix it manually. So here I can tell under the index.tsx, like it is this part on the right hand side. I'll say something like, let's make it like 52. Okay, as you can tell, I think I'm happy with this. You can update the value to be something like 48, 45. Yeah, I think I'll just go with 58, just like this. So other than this, I think I'm pretty happy with the end result of how home screen look. We even got the extra spacing at the bottom. Now, these are some hard-coded data, which is fine, we are gonna fix them, but for now, let's try to build the get started screen. So when we press this link, we should be able to see these pages. Like the UI should look like this. And I got both of these images, like design 1 and design 2, because if you scroll to the bottom, this is the rest of it. Okay, so basically both of them are a single screen. And I'll just explain this to Claude. So here's my prompt. I basically said, go ahead and take these images as a reference and then build the UI design. For now, make the UI work. Later, I'll ask you to implement the functionality. So I'm gonna run this and we will be redirected to this screen when we press this get started button. So it looks like it is done. Let's go ahead and test this out. As you can tell, we have the exact same screen. It looks a little bit different, but I think it's not that of a big deal. So one thing that I'd like to add is selecting the current date. So today is July 1st. Basically, I wanted to make the previous dates to be disabled. I think it is already implemented, like you cannot go back, but this should be selected out of the box. So I'm gonna say make the current date to be selected by default, and the previous dates should be disabled. So it looks like this has been implemented. I'll go ahead and reload my application, and by default the today's date should be selected, as you can tell. Now it is time to implement the actual functionality. Now for this, we don't really need to explain everything from scratch because we have already built this under the plan.md file. As you can tell, all we need to do is just saying, go ahead and implement the phase 3, which is the generation pipeline. And just before we ask Claude to implement it, there is something that I want to talk about. So here, let's say you type Tokyo, Japan, and then you say generate my trip. In the trip screen, you would like to see an actual image of Tokyo. You don't really want to get an image of New York, right? Or some kind of like a beach image. You don't really want to get that. Whatever you type here, you would like to get the image of that city. So to be able to make this work, you need to visit Unsplash and get those environment variables. So under the env.example, I have already provided them. So you would like to get the access key as well as the secret key. So let's go ahead and implement it. First off, you need to visit unsplash.com/developers, then create a developer account. It is super simple. Once you're logged in, you will just say create a new application. I already have one, but let's just do it from scratch. And there are some guidelines. I think AI already know about them. Like I'll just go ahead and say accept the terms and let's give it a name. I'll say Triply tutorial. And then I'll say create the application. For the description, I think I can say something like AI trip planner app. I'll create the application and we can scroll to the bottom. You will see the access key as well as the secret key. Now don't try to use my values because I'm going to be deleting them before publishing this video, but just go ahead and get your own values, then paste it under the .env file. Not under the example, but the .env file. So I'll go ahead and paste them in and then I'll just be right back. So I just got these values and put it under the .env file. Now I'll create a new Claude instance and then I'll just say go ahead and implement the plan a trip feature. And for this, it can take a look at the phase 3. So here's my prompt. I said, now I want you to implement the generate a trip feature, and we already planned it under the plan.md file. So take a look at the phase 3. If there is anything that I need to do, just let me know, like getting an environment variable from a dashboard or something similar. But else, implement everything by yourself. Now, while Claude is building it, let's go ahead and visit our ImageKit dashboard, and we're gonna get a couple of different endpoints. So here, just scroll to the bottom. I think under the settings, under the developer options, you will see 3 different values. So you will have the URL endpoint. Just go ahead and copy it. Then you would like to go and visit the .env file. So here we have 3 different environment variables. You're gonna paste the URL endpoint. You should do it under the .env file, not under the example. I don't really want to show you the .env file because I have some secrets there. But what you would like to do is getting the public key as well, pasting it, as well as the private key. Now, if you try to see your private key for the very first time, you might need to set up a password. Once you set it up, in the next time, you will just put this in, right? Once you fill this in, you're gonna get the actual value. So I'll go ahead and try to copy all these values and paste it into my .env file. Alright, so after some time, Claude has implemented it, and it says here are all the files that I have generated. So first off, we have our schema. Basically, it has added all these tables, and you can double check them by going into your Neon database. So initially, I only had the users table, but now I have all these tables as well. They are empty. We're going to create a trip, and hopefully we're going to get a record for every single trip. And then there are some more files. As you can tell, if you're interested, you can pause the video and go into these files from the source code. But in my case, I'll just see what I need to do to test this out. It says all environment variables are already set, so there is nothing that I need to do. But I think I need to start the ingest dev server. So this is the command that we can start. I have my Expo application running on this terminal, and in a new one, I will run the ingest server. Okay, so with this, I think I can go ahead and test this out. Here, I'll go ahead and search for Tokyo, and let's say Japan. Let's say we would like to go for a couple of days. Budget, I think I'll just go with comfort. Let's say one traveler, let's say culture, and travel pace could be balanced. I'll say generate my trip. Couldn't start your trip, unauthorized. I don't know what that means. Like, let's just double check if we have any console logs. Looks like not. I'm going to reload and just test out once again. And if it doesn't work, then we can try to fix it. So I'll press I. I'll just say get started, and again do the exact same thing. Okay, so this is the error that I'm getting. What I'll be doing is getting a screenshot. I'll paste it into Claude, and then I'll say, when I try to press the generate my trip button, this is the first thing that I see immediately. What is going on? Are we missing any environment variables or any kind of configuration? Just take a look at my code base and let me know. Alright, so turns out I was missing the Clerk secret key. Like here you can tell, error says what is going on. I'll just go ahead, get my Clerk secret key, and I will add it to my .env file. And just in case if you don't have it, you can go under the Clerk Express Quick Start, just scroll to the bottom, select your current project, which is Triply, and then reveal this part. Basically copy this entire thing, which is our secret key, then paste it into your .env file. I'll just do it and then come back to the video. So I have just added the Clerk secret key to my .env file, and if I say generate my trip, I'll get the exact same error. That's because you need to rerun your application from the terminal. So head over here, kill the Expo application, and then just restart it. And you can start it with the clear command. This is what I have done. Now if we run this, hopefully everything should be working out correctly. Okay, so our application is live. Let's go ahead and test this out for one last time. You can leave everything as default, but I think I'm going to select these options and let's say generate my trip. Now we should be able to see the loading screen, which look like this at the moment. That's fine. We're going to be fixing this. Let me just take a screenshot of it while this is building. Basically, I'm going to take this as a reference, paste it into Claude, and then I'm going to say make this look a lot more cleaner. We'll even say just go ahead, copy this entire screen. Let me just find it. We had a loading screen design. Where is it? So I think I don't have it here, but I'll just provide it to you. So in my case, it has failed and turns out I'm missing the OpenAI API key. Now to be able to get one, we can visit the platform.openai.com. And then from here, you would like to visit the API keys and then create a new secret key. Now I have to say that if you want to use OpenAI, then you need to spend like $5 and it's gonna be completely enough for this project and even for some future projects because it's gonna be extremely cheap to implement this feature. But if you don't want to pay anything at all, I think you can use Google Gemini model and you can take a look at it how to set that up. Basically, all you need to do is getting a secret key or like an API key. Now, if you don't know how to set it up to Gemini, you can just go into Claude and say, instead of having the OpenAI API key, I would like to get a Gemini API key, right? How do I do it? Just walk me through step by step, and then it should be able to give you the entire route so you can get the key. I'm gonna not show you that, but I'll just show you how to get an API key for OpenAI. Let's give it a name. I'll just say Triply tutorial. And I think I'll just leave everything as it is, and then I will say create the secret key. Now you will be able to see this only once, so you should just copy and immediately save it to your .env file. This is what I'll be doing, and I'll just be right back. So I have just added to my .env file, and I need to stop this application and then rerun it again. And now that it's been restarted, let's go ahead and test this out. Alright, so after some time, as you can tell, the trip has been generated. We have the actual Tokyo image, we have the budget, accommodation, like how much we spent for accommodation, for food and attractions. We have the full itinerary, and then where to stay. Now, this is definitely not what I'd like to have. The UI is not really matching with our referenced images. Like, I'm just gonna get into that in a second. So basically, this is what I want to have rather than this one. Like, we would like to have a map and the itinerary should look a little bit different than this. But that's fine, we're just getting there. That's the very first version that Claude just came up with. Now we need to do some follow-ups, and before we do so, if you're wondering like what is happening in the background, you can take a look at your ingest dashboard and see what is going on. So in the first try, it has failed because we were missing the OpenAI API key. But the very last one has worked out, and as you can tell, like you can go right here, take a look at the details. It's gonna show you the entire breakdown of like what is happening, what you're getting, which data that you're feeding, and like how long it takes. And let's take a look at the database as well. If we try to reload, we have two different trips. Wait, why do we have two? Did we run twice? Okay, so one of them has failed, that's why. Okay, so I think we can delete this one. This is not gonna ever happen again because we fixed the, we fixed the issue. It's not gonna fail again. We have the generation usage for this user, Now, I think we have this table because if they try to generate more than 20 in a single day, we're going to give them some rate limiting, right? Because we don't really want someone to have infinite amount of generation per day. We need to add some rate limiting so that, like we don't really run out of budget on OpenAI platform. And then we have a table for chat messages. This is going to be stored in the assistant tab in the incoming sections. But for now, let's go back into VS Code and then I'll just follow up with the UI improvements. Basically, let me find the screen. Yeah, it is this one. I will reference this and then I'm going to say again, put yourself in the loop and, take a screenshot from the simulator, compare it to this one until it looks exactly the same or almost the same. So here's my prompt. I just explained the exact same thing. I'll go ahead and run this. Hopefully our UI should be fixed. And once this is done, I'll just be right back. So as you can tell, Claude is building it, and it is actually unbelievable how good this is. Like it's almost identical to what we have provided. Now, can you imagine how long it would take you to take this design and, build it by yourself? Like give this curve, implement the map. Like it's unbelievable. This would take at least 2-3 hours for you to type the code by hand, but here we can just get it in, literally less than 5 minutes. So that's why I think you should learn how to use AI while still knowing the fundamentals. Okay, so with that said, I'll just wait for this to be completed. And once it is done, I'll just be right back. And by the way, I think we got the floating button. When we press, nothing happens. We will implement it later, but it is using the logo that I have provided, which is this one. So after some time, Claude has done a couple of different revisions as well. Now the text is visible, like previously it was not really this much visible. I think I'm currently happy with how this looks. And it also gives the attribution to the, author of the image, which is coming from Unsplash. And if you're using images from Unsplash for free, then you should give the attribution. This is what they ask from you. So that's why we include it right here. We have this button which does nothing. We can get into that. We can go back. I'm not going to press that because I don't want to go back. We have the map. It is actually working. We have the itinerary. Now here we just said it should be 5 days, but I can see that we only have 1 day within the itinerary. So I'm going to take this as a screenshot and I'm going to ask Claude to fix it. Now the reason this is happening is because I believe the OpenAI currently sending us only 1 day plan, but we will just say, make sure that the output is ready for 5 days. So we're going to have the first one, second, you get the point, depending on the duration. So I'm going to paste this image and then I'll explain this to Claude. So currently I like everything that we have in the trip detail screen, but the only problem here is that we have the duration as 5 days, but within the itinerary, I can only see day 1. So make sure that from OpenAI or from our AI agent, the AI model that we are using, we should be able to get the same duration as user input. So keep this in mind and go ahead, implement it. Alright, so I just took a quick break and come back, and here we go. Now everything has been implemented as expected. So in our case, we wanted to get 5 days duration, and now we have the itinerary day by day, in total 5 days. Okay, so that means this feature is also working as expected. And now maybe it is time to get started with the AI button, or like how do we call it, the AI assistant. Like we will ask some questions, things like go ahead and make the budget a little bit less, right? Like budget friendly, or add more food to the itinerary, things like that. And actually, you know what? We can leave this feature to, in a couple of minutes. But first, let's try to add this feature where we can press this button and kind of like get a drop down so that we can delete this plan, right? delete this trip. And this is going to be super easy to implement. So here I'll just say Claude to implement it. Okay, so everything works fine. Under the trip details screen, at the top right corner, we have a button with 3 dots. When we press that, nothing happens, but I want you to show some kind of a drop down where, user can delete the trip. And before deleting it immediately, ask a confirmation message. You can use a native component for it. And if we say delete, like after the confirmation, it should delete the trip from the database. So yeah, go ahead and implement it. Alright, so this has been implemented and it's a very basic functionality, but there is one thing that I don't really like. Basically, this should be a delete button instead of 3 dots. So I'll go ahead and say replace the 3 dots icon with a trash icon. So that was a pretty quick fix. Basically, we have updated the name from ellipsis to trash, and here's the end result. Now I want to add a different button right here, like a camera icon. When we press that, it should allow us to add a custom background. So here you should be able to add your own images rather than grabbing one from Unsplash. So here I'll say, right next to the delete button, I want you to add a camera button, and when user press that, we would like to open up the gallery so that user can select an image, like a custom image from their gallery, and update the trip background image or the cover image. Go ahead and implement this, and for image optimizations, make sure that you are using ImageKit. So we don't really want to have large files right here. It should be optimized using ImageKit. Okay, so this is my prompt, and at the end, I'll just say use context 7. Basically, this will make sure that it is getting the latest documentation for ImageKit and it is implementing it correctly. And while this is building it, we can go into our ImageKit dashboard. Under the media library, you can see your files. Now, in your case, probably you're not going to see these because I have uploaded them manually, but probably you're going to see a folder like Triply. This is what Claude has generated for me. And if you go into it, let's just open this up. We have the covers folder, and within this, we have, this image, which is the one that we have right here. So these images are saved in ImageKit to be optimized, right? So let's say this image originally is like 5 megabytes. You don't really want to store it in that way. So ImageKit will take this image and compress it, or like optimize it as much as possible so your application feels incredibly fast. Okay, so that's the media library that you can take a look at. And this is one of the images that I have uploaded in the past, but this is the one that we created in this project. Okay, so I'll go ahead and give the access or the permission to Claude to implement it. And now again, while this is building it, there is one thing that I want to mention. So to be able to get the images, like you're gonna select them from the gallery. And for this, there is a package called Expo Image Picker, okay? So probably, like as you can tell, Claude will try to install it. And since this is a native module, we need to rebuild our application. So we'll open up the terminal, rebuild it, and then to be able to access to the media library, you need to update the app.json file. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So here within the app.json, let me maximize the screen. So somewhere here, we will add the notification. So we will say something like this application, which is Triply. Triply wants to access your gallery. So I'm pretty sure you have seen this in real world when you're using a different mobile application. Like it is something that you must have. Okay, so this is one of the tips and tricks that you can keep in mind, but AI models are really, really good. So probably it's going to implement it without us asking it. Just in case if it doesn't, we can go ahead and, ask for it. So this is one of the things that you can take it as a note. Other than like a vibe coding, you need to know that this is the package that you need to install, and you need to add the permissions or the notifications right here under the app.json file. So here Claude is still building it, and let me try to walk you through it while this is building it. So as you can tell, it is using the Expo image picker. Now this is failing because we need to rebuild the app in a second. Then we are using ImageKit to optimize the image. And let's just see, I think it has also updated the app.json file. Let me try to scroll to the top. Okay, so here you can tell, let me actually show you the entire file. It has added this part. And here is the permission prompt that our users will get. So it basically says, allow Triply to access your photos so you can set a custom cover image for your trip. And let me give the permission to Claude. Alright, so this has been implemented. We can see the button right here. I think I want to make it a little bit larger. So I'm gonna go ahead and find this file. It should be somewhere here, and let me just maximize the screen. I'll search for trash. Right next to it, we have the camera fill. I'll just make the size to be something like 20. Yeah, I think this looks way cleaner, maybe like 22. So yeah, with that said, we need to rebuild our application. This is what Claude says as well, because we are using a new native module. So I'll go ahead, open up my terminal, kill this, and then we'll just say something like npx expo run iOS. Once this is done, I'll just be right back. So I have just rebuilt the application, but I cannot access to that previous trip. So let's go ahead and get started with a new one. Now we cannot really get access to it because the trips page has not been built yet. So we'll just start a new one. Let's just say I want to visit Istanbul and let's say Turkey. I'll put a couple of days and I'll just leave everything as it is. Now we have one to do, which is updating the loading page. We'll get into it. And if you take a look at the ingest server under the runs, as you can tell, this is running at the moment. So it is working in real time. As soon as this is completed, it'll be updated in the dashboard as well. So as you can tell, it has been generated with the actual Istanbul image, right? This is not just a random place. This is the actual place. So this is how we set it up with Unsplash. And then you can take a look at the itinerary. This is like 5 days, just like previously. And we can go into ingest server. You can just take a look at it. This is completed. And then if we reload, now we should have 2 trips. Let's try to delete the Istanbul one, right? And maybe before that, let's try to update the custom background image. So I'll just press that. As you can tell, I just get access to the library without a question. So my application didn't really ask this for me. And I believe the reason for this is because in the past, I've already tested this out. So in your case, you will get this permission as the first question. And then once you say allow access to the media library, then you will see the screen. So here I'll just go ahead and select something random like this one. Let's say choose, and hopefully it should work out. Okay, so here we go. We'll go into ImageKit dashboard just to double check under the covers. And here we go. I think that was the previous background, and this is the test upload. I don't know why we cannot see the image. Let me just try to reload the page. Okay, so probably this is something that has failed, but here we go. We have the actual image. So this has been not only updated in the UI, but also in the ImageKit dashboard. Okay, now let's go ahead and delete this trip. I'll say delete the trip. Here we got a confirmation. I'll just say yes, delete. We are redirected to the home screen. Now let's go and visit the database. And if we reload, now notice how the Istanbul one has been deleted. So overall, everything is working as expected. Now with that said, the other feature that I want to implement is the updating the loading screen. So this is an image that I just provided. You can get it from the source code. It is called trip loading screen design. And we will basically ask Claude to make our loading screen to look exactly like this. And you already know the drill. We'll just say put yourself into a loop. And for this background image, I think I have the demo, which is this one, right? So you already know this. We have already done this a couple of times, but I'll just show you my prompt as well. So here's my prompt. I'll go ahead and attach both of these images. The first one is trip dash loading screen design. And then the other one is going to be trip loading screen demo. Okay, so I'll go ahead and run this. I'll just be right back once this has been implemented. Alright, so as you can tell, Claude is trying to build it, and it kind of shows me the end result while it is building it. And as you can tell, it is almost identical to what we have right here. Like, I can't imagine how long it would take you to build it by hand, but if you use AI, it can literally build it less than 3 minutes. I think this has been implemented, and it is trying to create a trip in Tokyo, or maybe this could be a mockup UI, but let's just see what it says. One note, I left the preview webhook in place. Okay, so it basically says I just put it on the UI so that you can double check. I'll just say, yeah, strip it out. Like, this has been implemented correctly. If you wanted to, you can go ahead and ask for more follow-ups, but I'm pretty happy with the end result as it is identical to what I want to have. Alright, so with that said, let's go ahead and commit all of our changes and leave this lesson right here. I will close everything. Let's go ahead and press Command-Shift-P. I'll say toggle the status bar visibility, and then as usual, I'll create a new branch. So for now, let's say something like, so I think I'll just call it as create trip. You can give it a different name. And then I will add everything to this staging area. Let's get a commit message, and then we will commit this, then create the pull request. So here, while this is trying to get a message, I'll go ahead and visit the repo. Let's commit this and then publish the branch. So I think I have a pretty slow internet connection, but okay, it's done. Let's refresh. Here we go. I'll say create the pull request. And then as usual, we'll wait for CodeRabbit to generate some suggestions. Alright, so after some time, we got the entire summary for this pull request, and as usual, we are interested in the suggestions. So the very first one is a minor issue that we have, so I'm just going to skip this because I don't really want to make this tutorial, too long than it should be. But here we have a major problem. You can read it, I have already done this, and I'll just try to get the prompt for AI agents. So this is one of the steps in our workflow, as you remember. So I'm going to copy it and go into Claude. Let me just get a new Claude instance, and I'm going to paste this in. Okay, so I'm just going to run this, and let's take a look at the other issues that we have. Again, a minor issue, which is related to data integrity and integration. I would say go ahead and implement them, even if they are minor, if you're building a real project. But this is a tutorial, so I don't really want to waste too much time. Instead, I'll only focus on the major problems. Okay, so here I'll copy this as well. Now what you can do is basically copy every single one of these prompts and paste them under a single instance, but it's not going to be that great. I think it is always better to just give one, like one task at a time. So this has been fixed. I'll go ahead, paste the second solution, and you don't really need to wait for this to be completed. So you can open up a new instance and then go into the next issue, right? Copy it and then paste it right here. So like at the same time, it's going to fix this issue as well as this one. And you can just create as much as you wanted to. Let me just find another major issue if we have. This is related to security and privacy. So I'm going to go ahead, copy it, and then paste it right here. So we have another major issue. Like here you can tell this is the beauty of using a code review tool, because Claude by default is not able to see all these kinds of edge cases, right? So here you have a different senior engineer in your team that goes through your code base with a certain mindset. it literally tries to find some issues, like some security problems. Yeah, with that said, I'll go ahead and just take a look at one of these chats. They're completed, so I'll just paste it right here. Now, one of the extra steps would be to actually check out the code, how Claude has implemented it. But since this is a tutorial, I don't really want to waste too much time, as I said previously. So yeah, I'll just go ahead, try to copy the prompts and paste it to Claude to fix them. Here it says you have functional correctness. So this isn't cross-validated against the category amounts. Yeah, so I think whatever, I'll just copy it and paste it right here as a separate prompt. And CodeRabbit has an extension. This is what I'm using. Like in the terminal, you can get the comments. You can take a look at it. It's gonna be free to install it. Just go ahead and type CodeRabbit. Like it's pretty popular, as you can tell. Now, once everything is implemented, we will go ahead and add a new commit. I think we have covered every single major issue. Okay, so this has also been fixed. I'm gonna close the chats. Within this same branch, you don't really want to switch to master, okay? Just don't play with it. Make sure you're under the same branch and send the commit message or the commit. Then we'll sync this up. So previously we had only one commit. Here you can tell, but now it should be two. Once we sync this up, I'll just scroll to the bottom and say merge this pull request. Now technically CodeRabbit is trying to run another code review on this commit, but I think we don't really need to wait for it because we have already fixed it with CodeRabbit. Okay, so I'll just say merge this pull request, confirm it. Once this is done successfully, we'll go back into our code base. We'll switch to the master and we'll get the latest changes. Okay, so with that said, I think we are completely done with this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so this is where we left. In this lesson, we would like to get started with the assistant screen. And just before we implement it, I want to talk about the reason, like why you would like to integrate a tool like Sentry to your own mobile application. In my case, I have already implemented it in my own app, which is deployed on App Store. And now let's talk about the primary reason behind it. I have some diagrams that I'd like to walk you through, and you can find these diagrams in the description. As usual, it's going to be completely free. Okay, so you might be asking why I need Sentry in the first place. Like, what's the problem, what's the solution, and what's the real power of it? Okay, so here I have a question. When your users face some errors in your application, do you think they would send you an email explaining the problem? Or do you think they would delete the application and leave a 1-star review? Well, 100% of the time, or almost let's just say 99% of the time, they'll just delete the application and they will leave 1-star review. They'll say, the assistant screen doesn't really work. Go ahead and delete this app, or, so you got the point. They'll just delete your application. And you have no idea what's the problem. Like some people just leave 1-star review without telling you the issue. They just say app doesn't work, but which feature doesn't really work, right? So you would like to set up Sentry in your application so that whenever one of your users gets an error, you immediately get notified. So that could be via Slack, Discord, but by default it's going to be by email. So I'm going to show you how to set up every single one of them, but here I have more examples that I want to talk and just walk you through. Okay, so basically Sentry will watch your application, okay? So it is your app's watchtower, if that makes sense. So here is the role of the Sentry. It is much more than this, but I would say these are the fundamentals. So it's going to try to catch the errors and automatically report the crashes. There is something called Sentry logs, which are basically, like, to put it simply, they are console log but structured. So they are searchable and they are persisted in the cloud. It is not like just only in the terminal. There is session replays, which means that it is just going to show you what your user saw. Let's say I am one of your users, okay? I'm using this app, and when I press this button, something has failed. Sentry will take a video recording of this and show you that in your Sentry dashboard. Like, it's absolutely unbelievable. And then there is also features for like performance, which comes with traces and bottlenecks. And we are going to try to implement traces in this tutorial as well. And as I said before, you will immediately get alerts, which will be in real time. You can set it up with Slack if you're using, if you're building this app with your team. But in my case, I was just building it by myself. I just left the default option, which is Gmail. And then moving forward, we have Sentry logs. Now you can basically pause the video and read it. I'm pretty sure it'll make sense 100%, but let me just quickly walk you through it. So instead of using console log, you would like to use Sentry logs if you're building a real application. And here are some of the reasons. Like, console log will live on the user's device only. When they close the app, everything is gone. However, on the other side, you have Sentry logs, which is going to be sent to Sentry's server, right? So it's going to be persisted and searchable. But this is, like, as I said, it's going to disappear when the app closes. This is plain text compared to Sentry logs, which are like structured, and you have like literally tags within them. And you're going to see how to implement them, or at least how they look in the dashboard. Then when it comes to the traces, errors, and replays, of course, console log doesn't really have it. It has no connection to the error, then a simple text, but Sentry logs has everything. So basically, you stop guessing, but instead start knowing everything. And here's an example scenario. This is what I explain in every single one of my tutorials because it's a really good example. Basically, just think of this scenario where you have 50K users in your app. This is an e-commerce app and you're getting 500 checkouts daily. And some of them will fail, right? Either it's the credit card, I don't know, it's the bank or your paywall solution, right? If you use console log, of course, you are not going to get the solution, but with Sentry, you can just query the logs. You can just say, show me all the logs related to payment, that is an error, here is the city, and last 24 hours. Okay, so I hope that this gives you an idea about the role of the Sentry, and actually, all of the production grade companies are using them. So you can just double check by visiting sentry.io. On their landing page, as you can tell, the best companies in the world, including GitHub, Convex, Supabase, every one of them are using Sentry. And I just put them right here. If you're interested, you can take a look at it. Like, Cursor is using it, GitHub, Vercel, Supabase, and even Convex. Now, before implementing it, if you're interested in the actual documentation, go ahead and check it out. We have Sentry logs and Sentry tracing. First, I want to set up both of these, and then we can get into the session replays, and there's even something called AI agent monitoring, and this is a new feature, and I think it makes sense to use it in this application. I'll get into that, in a little bit in the video. But first, let's go ahead and copy this page, paste it into Claude. So I'll just open up a Claude instance, shrink the left-hand side. First, I'm gonna, input my prompt. So in this project, I want to set up Sentry, which is something that we have already done in the root of this project. Like, I just paused it because I want to show you that. I think it should be under the layout file. Like, we already have the Sentry set up, but this doesn't really include the logs or traces. This literally only initialize it. So let me complete this prompt. I think I stopped it without completing it. I said, which is something that we already done in the layout file. So I'm going to reference it and then I'll say, now I want you to implement the Sentry logs from scratch. Make sure to keep it simple, but add it into the functions that would make sense to have Sentry logs. Basically, I want this feature to help me out in production. And right below, I will attach the official documentation from Sentry, so you can follow along with it. Okay, so with this in mind, I'm going to paste the documentation and we'll just run this. Now, while this is building it, you can go ahead and open up a new chat and do the exact same thing for the traces. Let's just go back to the documentation. We'll copy it. Now, I think we can paste it right here, but I'll just wait for this to be completed and then I'll follow up. So after a couple of minutes, Claude has implemented it and it says there are 3 different really important cases that you need to have, and it says I have already added them. So you can take a look at it, but I'll just try to kind of like quickly summarize. So it's going to send us a warning or an error whenever an API request fails. Then for the authentication, again, we are going to either get an info or error depending on the situation. Like if it fails, of course, you're going to get an error log. And let me just show you the code part, how that look. You're basically calling the Sentry logger, and it has a couple of different methods. I believe it should be like 6. So we have we have debug, error, fatal, info, trace, and warning. And there is a different usage called FMT, like formatting it, or formatted, I believe. But yeah, in general, we have 6 different methods. We are calling the error under the catch, info under if, just to let you know everything is done successfully. And I believe we also have warning. Yeah, just like this. So you can take a look at the source code within these files. Here it says I have already implemented it on the client side, but if you wanted to, it can also implement it on the server side. I want to keep it simple, so I'll just say don't do it, but if you just say yes and press enter, it's going to implement that. So on top of this, I'm going to say, okay, so that's perfect. Now I want you to implement the Sentry tracing, just like what you have done right here. So make sure it has been implemented in the correct places. Like think of it as a real-world production-ready application. And here I'll just say I paste the docs from Sentry below. Let me just say below, and then I'm gonna paste the documentation of Sentry traces right here. And once this is done, I'll just be right back. Now, while Claude is building it, you can take a look at the tracing documentation just to understand what exactly this does. Well, it will basically track your software performance, things like throughput and latency. And like you can take a look at the implementation. I think at this point, it is not really important to understand the coding part of Sentry or any kind of tool really, and that's why they have this button as of 2026. Like you just need to understand what it does, and if anything fails, only then you can jump into code and fix the issue. It's still, I think, very, very important to understand the basics and fundamentals, but not really any syntax of any kind of third-party tool. That's why we have this button in the first place. Okay, so with that said, let's go and take a look at Claude. I think this has been implemented, and here it says these are the things that I have added, which is under the generate trip.tsx. So here is how that works. You use Sentry start span, you add a couple of different attributes, name, and a bunch of different, let me just maximize the screen. Yeah, really just bunch of different options. I'll leave it to you to explore it in detail, but with this, I think I'm just gonna say make sure to implement the session replace. Before I ask it, I think it has already been implemented, and let's double check. Okay, so under the root layout, here integrations. Okay, so we say mobile replay integration. This is the only line that you need to add. And I think within this, you can add some options like mask all images. And by default, it is equal to true, but I'll make it to be false so that we can see the images in the Sentry dashboard. So you're going to see what I mean in a couple of minutes. And then I'll say mask all texts to be false. And I'll say mask all vectors to be false as well. Okay, so with that, I think we are completely done with the Sentry setup. Now, what I would do in my actual application, as I add more and more features, like time to time, I would just come into a Claude instance and I would say, I have just implemented this new feature. I want you to just take a look at it if we can implement Sentry logs, tracing, or any other feature really. But yeah, with this application, I think we have the most important cases being covered by Claude, and Sentry has been set it up successfully. Now with this in mind, let's go ahead and get started with the assistant screen. So at this point, you know exactly what we're going to be doing. We'll just take the design and ask Claude to put itself into a loop and then came up with this design, right? So I'll just go ahead and tell this exactly to Claude. And first, let me attach that file. It is called assistant screen UI design. So basically, I want you to build this exact same UI design for the assistant screen. And I want you to put yourself into a loop where you take a screenshot from the simulator and compare it to the design until they're identical. Now, one thing that we could do instead of explaining this every single time, I think we can put this into Claude.md, right? This is just something that I realized. We can put it into Claude.md. Like, let me show you. I think we're using agents.md instead of Claude.md, but you get the point. Here we can add something like under the conventions, like you would explain it right here. And then in your chat, you would say, go ahead and follow it within the Claude.md file or agents.md. But in this case, I'll just explain it and run this. So Claude has implemented it almost in one shot. Basically, in the first try, there was like a small issue, which is this extra space. So I just follow up. I said there is some extra unnecessary spacing. Go ahead and delete it. And also it first included these chats, which are coming from the design image. Let me show you that. Like it tried to copy the text, but again, by itself, it has fixed it. So let's go ahead and test this out. I think first I'm just going to reload my application because it's been a while since I haven't used this. Okay, so here I'll go ahead and say something like, hey, how are you doing? Okay, so one of the things that I want to fix, instead of having a loading spinner, I want to have this as streamed, just like in ChatGPT, right? So I'm gonna say, where should I visit in April? Like instead of having the loading state, we would like this to be streamed. And this is pretty easy to implement actually. So I'll just go ahead and ask Claude to do it. Like there is not too much logic behind it. Okay, so the assistant screen works as expected. The only add-on feature. So I have accidentally paused the video and I'm recording this part from the feature. Basically, this was my entire prompt. So I said the assistant screen works as expected. The only add-on feature that I want to have is streaming for chat replies. Basically, instead of having a loading spinner, I want to have the messages just to get them like chunk by chunk. It should be streamed. And then I said, go ahead and implement it. So that was my prompt. Now let's follow along with the video. So it looks like it has been implemented. Let's go ahead and test this out. Basically, it is using a readable stream and the stream option is equal to true. So here I'll go ahead and say, where should I visit in April, let's say. Okay, so as you can tell, we are getting the answer chunk by chunk, which means the streaming has been implemented correctly. There is one optimization that we can do, like we sent the message, but we still see it in the input. So we'll just say basically, go ahead and reset the input as soon as we sent the message. So here it says it is done. I'd like to test this out. I'll just say, hey, how are you doing? Okay, as you can tell, input has been resetted. Now, before we go into the next screen, which is trips, I think here there is something that we need to set up, which is going to be Sentry AI agent monitoring. Now, with this feature, we can monitor and debug our AI systems with full stack context. So we will be able to track key insights like token usage, latency, tool usage, and even the error rates. And the data coming from here will be fully connected to your other Sentry data like logs, errors, and traces. Now, this could be very important and actually useful just to see how your users are using your application. So basically, Sentry will get every single input from your users and even the outputs from your AI agent, and you can just time to time check it out from your Sentry dashboard. And you will be able to understand how your users are using this assistant screen. Do they ask general questions or more questions that are related to trips and travel? So this is something that we would like to implement. Definitely. Here I'll go ahead and copy this entire page. If you're interested, you can take a look at the code as well, like just see how they are implementing it, but really the syntax is not really important. That's what I would say. Okay, so I'll go ahead and within the same Claude chat instance, I'll just say, in this project, I would like to implement Sentry AI agent monitoring. And then I said I want it to be implemented specifically in the assistant screen, which is this one. And I said I pasted the documentation from Sentry down below. Go ahead and follow along and build it. So I'll just paste the documentation and let's run it. Alright, so this has also been implemented, and off camera I asked this question, which is when to visit Istanbul, what is the best time? Now if you go into your Sentry dashboard, under the Explore and LLM calls, just select your project and you're going to see all the calls that you have just made. So here, if you're interested, you can press that and get into the details, but here you can see a quick breakdown, like how much does it cost, how many tokens you have used, the model, your input, and let's just press the actual ID and get into the details. Like there is even the AI view, which I'll get into it, but here you have the input. This is the input from assistant. Basically, it is the very first message. Then we have the user as well as the output. So that's the exact same output that we have right here. So this would be a really good dashboard to just go ahead and analyze your application and your users, how they are using your application. And as I said, there's even the AI view. You can press that and get into the details if you're really interested. So I will leave the dashboard for you to explore. And here you can tell like we have, I think like this call is slow, and then you can just jump into your code base, talk with Claude why this is slow and how can we make it faster. That's the role of Sentry here, to help you out, to see which part of your apps are slow and how everything comes together in terms of performance and error tracking. Okay, so with that said, I think I'm pretty happy with the assistant screen, but I think we have a problem. So if I try to reload, we don't really save any questions in the database or any chats, right? I'll just double check by going into my database. Yeah, like we literally don't have any chat messages. This should be pretty easy to implement. Basically, we will have one endpoint. It is just going to call our database and insert into the table. So I'll just talk with Claude. Under the assistant screen, everything works as expected. The only thing that we are missing is storing the messages in the database. Go ahead and implement it in a way that the messages are saved in the database, and if we press the delete button at the top of the navbar, it should delete the messages from database for the current user. Before you delete the messages, make sure to ask for a confirmation message. Okay, so I'll just send it and let's see how it'll end up. Alright, so this has been implemented. First, I thought it is not really working correctly because I was checking the database and the chat messages table was empty. But turns out Claude has created the assistant underscore messages as a separate table, and we have all of our questions and answers from AI. Now let's go ahead and delete it. And just before I do so, let me explain the difference. Basically, this is for the table. for the assistant screen, but chat messages is for the refining the UI. So this is something that we'll get into in the incoming sections. For now, let's go ahead and just say, clear the conversation. Everything is gone. Let's go back into database, reload, and as you can tell, it has been cleared out. So everything working as expected. Okay, so I think with this, we are completely done with the assistant screen, and maybe it is time to get started with the trips screen. Now, I think I'm just going to complete it in this lesson, and then we're going to commit our changes, because here there is nothing really complicated other than fetching our trips and displaying it. So for this, I already have the design. Let me just show you that. I think it is, yeah, it is this one. We basically want to fetch every single trip that we have for the current user and just display them, just like this. So I'm gonna reference this file, which is called trips screen UI design. So I want you to build the trip screen and make it exactly identical to the attached image. You can put yourself into a loop of taking a screenshot from the simulator and comparing it to this design until it is identical. Okay, so I'll just wait for this to be completed. Once it is done, I'll just be right back. Alright, so as you can tell, this has been built. It is implemented as we expected. I think I'm pretty happy with the end result. However, if you wanted to, you can go ahead and ask for some follow-ups just to make the UI a bit more clean. But if you press to the cart, it's going to take you to the trip details screen. Now, I just realized we haven't really implemented this feature yet. This is something that we can do in the incoming section. For now, I think I'm pretty happy with how everything looks so far. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and commit our changes and leave this section right here. In the next section, we can implement this AI feature and I think the profile screen. Okay, so with that said, I'll go ahead and maybe close everything. Let's create a new branch as usual. For the name, I think, wait, what did we done in this section? We created the assistant as well as the trip screen. So I'm just gonna say assistant and let's just say trip screen, or let's just say screens. Yeah, I think I'll just come up with this name. Let's stage everything, get a commit message. Let's publish the branch. We'll go into source code. Compare and create the pull request. Now, as usual, I'll go through the fixes right here. I'll commit that and, we'll move on with the next lesson. Alright, so after some time, as usual, we got the quick summary by CodeRabbit, then a bunch of different suggestions that are actually important. Now, this is a tutorial, as I said, I don't really want to waste too much time, so I'm not going to go ahead and fix every single one of these, but in the previous lessons, we have already done this. So I'll just go ahead and merge this pull request. But you already know what to do. You will basically get the prompt for AI agent, copy this, paste it into Claude or Cursor, whatever you're using. And once you have the fixes, you will commit this, right, under the same branch. And then you will just come here. Eventually, you'll say merge the pull request. So this is what I'll be doing. I'll just confirm. And once this is done, we can go back into VS Code, switch to the master branch, and then I'll just sync this up by getting the latest changes. Okay, so with this, hopefully I'll see you in the next lesson. Alright, so now we would like to get started with the profile screen. Just before we do so, there is something different that I want to talk about, and then we'll get into this screen. So there is something called experiments. Specifically, this is coming from ingest, and this will basically allow us to test our code changes against live production traffic. I think this is one of the use cases that every single one of us would need at some point. So here I'd like to take a couple of minutes and walk you through it. Here I have some diagrams, let me walk you through it, and then we'll get into the documentation and we'll see how to implement it. like there is a really cool use case for our application, and like I'm pretty sure it'll make sense. Okay, so first off, there is a situation that every developer hits at some point, and let's try to go through it. So you write some code that already works. Now you want to try a different version. This could be a new payment provider, a faster database query, or in our case, it's gonna be a different AI model. But here is the scary part. So you might think if I swap it for everyone, and if it is worse, like if it is slower, more expensive, breaks more, and so on, then all my users will feel the pain at once, right? So we don't really want to test it for every single one of our user at once, but instead we would like to go with a different path, which is a little bit more careful, or I would say safe to implement. So here ingest comes with the experiment feature, and let's try to go over it. So basically it is group.experiment, and this will let you to run two versions of the same code at the same time and automatically decide which one each request uses. So here in our case, we will write something like use the old way 90% of the time and the new way 10% of the time. So in our case, like we will use GPT-4o mini in like 90% of the time, but we also want to test this out. Like this is a little bit more expensive, but it is way smarter than mini, right? The mini model. So instead of like testing this out on every single user, because it could get pretty expensive, what we'll be doing instead is just using it in like 10% of our user base, and depending on our metrics, maybe we'd like to increment it, right? We could make it something like 50% and this one also 50%. So this is an example code block, which is actually coming from the documentation. We'll just get into it in a second. And here let's talk about the benefits of this feature of ingest. So basically this is low risk because instead of going, as I said, like 100% of your users, you just go first at 10%. If it is bad, you can just bring it back. And you know, not every single one of your users will complain, only the 10%. Then you get real data for free. Now, this is the big one because ingest is already tracking how long each run takes, how often it fails, and how much it costs. So that's one of the other benefits. And the other one is like you can decide on facts and not guesses, right? Because in your ingest dashboard, you will be able to see the you will be able to see the metrics. And finally, it is pretty easy to dial up or log in. Like as I said, if it turns out well, you can just go 50-50, right? 50% for the, in our case, let's say mini model, and 50% in the max model. And the only thing you need to do is basically updating these two values, and that's it. And here at the very end, I just added an image just to visualize it. You can take a look at it. Basically, we keep the 90% of our users in the same route as previously, but the 10% tries the new model. And then eventually, depending on the analytics, you will be able to select one of these routes. Okay, so with this, now as usual, you don't really need to read the entire documentation as of 2026. I hate to say this, but that's the reality. So I'll just go ahead and copy the entire markdown. This has been prepared for us by the ingest team. So they basically say, just copy it and paste it to your LLM. But if you're interested, I would say just pause the video. I'll link this in the description. You can just take a look at it, like how that works. And here I'll go ahead and paste it into VS Code. Let me just find it. So I'll just get a Claude instance and I'm gonna say, so ingest has the experiments feature. I will link the documentation right below. I want you to go through it and in our case use GPT-4o mini model and GPT-4o model. So here I just paused the video and fixed these models. I just put the correct name. Here I'll just say for the 4o mini model, we would like to use it in 90% of the times. And for the regular model, we would like to use it in 10% of the time. So read the documentation and then implement it correctly in our application without breaking any other features. Okay, so I'll just copy the documentation. I'll just go back. paste it right here. Now this has nothing to do with the profile screen. So while this is running it, we can just go ahead and within a new instance, we can build the profile screen. And for this, I have two different images. You can grab them from the source code. This is the profile screen design first. And the second one is basically after you scroll. So like this is up until the help and support. And if you scroll, this is the rest of it. I'm gonna attach both of them into this new chat, and then I'll just say build it exactly what we have right here. And I think this is asking for permissions. I'll just give the access. So here I'll go ahead and say profile screen design 1, and let's say profile screen design 2. Now this is kind of annoying that you have to give access every single time if you want Claude to edit automatically everything without asking. There is a bypass mode, which is something that I can show you in a couple of minutes. Okay, so while this is building it, I'll just go right here and I'll say, now I want you to build the profile screen for me. I have attached two different images, which is the entire profile screen that I want you to copy. And I want you to put yourself into the loop where you take a screenshot from the simulator and then compare it to these designs until they are identical. Alright, so this is the profile screen. I think it is looking pretty similar to what we have provided. I just don't know if the delete account button is working, so I'm gonna go ahead and just ask a follow-up. So just make sure that the delete account button is working. Basically, when user press that, first ask a confirmation, and if user confirms it, we should be able to delete the user from both Clerk and from the database. I believe the deletion from database will be handled from Webhooks. So just make sure to delete all user data like the trips, I don't know, chat messages, etc. from the database. Okay, so this will basically go ahead and implement it, or at least it should. And once this is done, we can test this out. Alright, so this has also been implemented. Now, I don't really want to test this out. I don't want to press this button because it would delete the account. We can test this out just before we end the tutorial. For now, I want to show you how to implement the privacy policy and terms of service. Basically, when we press them, it should navigate us to those screens. And these are something that is not really optional, but you have to have them if you want to deploy your app to the App Store. So in my case, I have already built an example page for this app, but I'm gonna show you the entire process of building it from absolute scratch. Like, how do you get the privacy policy? Let me show you the screens. Like, how do you build it correctly? Of course, you let AI to build it, but I have some prompts that I'm going to share with you, and they are project agnostic. So you can build any kind of project and use these prompts. I think they will just generate really, really good results. And then we will deploy it with Cloudflare workers. I'll get into that as well, but notice how we are using the same logo, the same theme, which is blue, and we will basically build it within the same code base. Okay, and I will also show you how to get these beautiful, mockup images. So first off, let's actually go ahead and get some of these mockup images. For this, there is a website called shots.so. So you would like to go ahead and visit it. It is like free to get started with, but they have paid plan as well. In our case, we absolutely don't need the paid plan. So I think these are the things that I have generated in the past, but let's just say start over. Okay, this is what you're going to see initially. And within here, we would like to select a style, some borders, a shadow, so on and so forth. First off, I think I'll just say, let's take a look at the templates. Like UI showcase, maybe we can just say frame. Let me double check pretty quickly. I think there should be something like, iPhone 16 or 17 Pro. Alright, so I just found it. Basically, you will press this button and then you will select one of the mockups. In this case, I'll go with iPhone 17. For the background, I don't really want to have this colorful background. So we can go under the frame and, just get the white background. And actually, we would like to get a transparent background. So here you can, I think, just say no background at all. This is what we'll do eventually, but first let's just select the white one, and then here you can select a couple of different variations, like position would be updated, and I think in my case, let me put them side by side. So in my case, I'm using this one, which I believe, yeah, I think it is this one. You can even get like the 3 shots, one at a time. And then all you need to do, pressing this button and uploading your images. You can grab those images by coming into your simulator, take a screenshot. So here I think I'm taking a video recording. I don't know how that happened. So I'm just going to say delete this. But basically, if you press this button, it's going to take a screenshot. It's going to save it to your desktop or downloads, whatever. Then you would just press this button, okay? Select the image and get it right here. So what you would like to do is taking screenshots of some of these screens, like the home screen, I don't know, assistant, authentication, so on and so forth. This is what I have done. And then I just exported these images. Okay, so once you are ready, you'll just say export and make sure to select the background as transparent. Like here, just to give you an example, I have selected this layout preset and I have uploaded this image. And then you would just, maybe you can even zoom in. Yeah, I think I would leave it like this. And then I would just export it. Then once you export it, put it in your Visual Studio Code, right? You would like to go maybe under the File Explorer and let's create a folder called Legal. And this is where we'll put our legal pages as well as this entire website. So all you need to do is grabbing these images that you exported and then putting them right here. This is what I'll be doing. I'll just grab them from the source code and then I'll just be right back. So I just got those images and I put them under the legal folder. So here you can tell we have the demo1, demo2, and we have the hero.png. And then I took the entire screenshot of this website and I'll just say use this as an inspiration so we can kind of get a similar result to this one. Now I think it is time to get started with this legal page or the landing page, and we can spin up a new Claude instance for it. So here I'll go ahead and maximize the screen and I'll talk with Claude. So we have built our entire mobile application. Now it is time to get started with a landing page. First off, we want to have a beautiful UI design, and for this I will attach a file called uiinspiration.png. I want you to clone it, and then I want you to build me a privacy and policy screen. For the content, I will attach some prompts later at some point, but for now I just want you to build me the entire home screen or the landing screen for this legal page. And then here I'll just follow up and I'll say we would like to deploy this legal folder to Cloudflare workers for completely free. So keep this in mind and come up with the UI design. Don't use any kind of external technologies other than HTML and CSS. Keep it simple yet working. So this should be working. Okay, so with this, I think I'll just send it and I'll wait for the answers. Now, while this is building it, there is another kind of tips and tricks that I want to share with you. So let's say you installed these images, but they're let's say 5 megabytes. You definitely don't want to have it in your landing page as 5 megabytes, right? In my case, I have compressed them. And how do you do it with Claude, right? So basically, just go ahead and ask Claude in a separate chat. Let me just maximize it. You would say, attach the image, let's say demo1.png, and just say use ffmpeg, which is a tool. Let's say ffmpeg. I'll just give you the prompt. I'll say use ffmpeg and compress this image. This is what I generally do. And if you don't have FFmpeg installed on your laptop, you can just ask Claude to install it for you. So here you can follow up and you would just say something like install FFmpeg if I don't have it already. And sometimes like it has to use Python and you can just give access to it as well. So this is one of the things that I think every vibe coder should keep in mind, even though we are not really doing vibe coding here. But yeah, basically this is one of the things that I want you to keep in mind. It's really, really important. Have your original image, use FFmpeg and compress the image. This is exactly what I have done in my actual application as well, which is the one that I mentioned in the past, like this one. Here I've used FFmpeg almost in every single image to compress it and not really ship something really, really large. Alright, so Claude is still building it, but I just went ahead and run this file. If you take a look at it, it is almost identical to what we have right here. So I'm just going to put them side by side. Like this is the one that we created with Claude right now, and this is the original one. Like it's literally a clone of it. There is one thing that I realized. Here we are not using the actual logo. For this, I'll go and visit VS Code. Under the design, I'll just copy the logo.png with Ctrl+C, and then I'll paste it right here. I think while I was talking, Claude has just went ahead and copied the logo, as you can tell. So I'm going to delete the copy from here, and it's going to be using it. Now here, I think you can take a look at it. I believe it says, like I just copied the trip logo PNG. Okay, so with this, let's go back into the localhost. If I reload, hopefully this should be updated in a couple of seconds. And now while this is building this, we can go and visit the privacy policy, which doesn't really have anything. Same for terms of service and the support screen. I'll just go back into Claude, but first let me copy my prompts. So this is the prompt for privacy, this is the prompt for terms of service. So I'm going to copy it and then I'll just paste it right here. So let me kill these images. Okay, I'll paste this in. And right after this one, I'll get the second prompt, which is for the privacy policy. Alright, so this has been implemented, and then I just follow up with the other prompt for the privacy policy. Now, just because this is implemented, that doesn't mean you need to update anything. Well, of course, Claude will not be able to put your legal entity or the, contact address, so on and so forth, or like the minimum age for this application, etc. So what you need to do, like you will just get the entire page. Let's visit it. Maybe you would like to pretty quickly read it or ask Claude to kind of like what I need to provide. And here, as you can tell, there are a couple of different placeholders that you need to update. But other than this, the entire page will be completely ready. Now, I just did the exact same thing for the privacy policy. Once it is done, I'll just be right back. So here we go. Claude is done with this as well. We have the terms of service. Now, I also said update the logo. So just use the logo.png. And I think I'll just say add the support page as well. Because when you try to deploy your app to the App Store, they want you to pass a support page. Here I'll just say, just build me a basic support screen. So under the legal pages, I want you to build me a pretty simple support screen and link it in the home screen. So in the footer, we have the support link. Make sure it takes us to that page. Alright, so here we go. We have the support screen as well. It is working as expected. I think UI is looking pretty clean and crisp. Now, it is time to deploy it, right? We don't really want to run this on the local host only. I'll be using Cloudflare Workers, which is really easy to implement and it's completely free to get started with. So go ahead and log in. In my case, I'll just log in with my GitHub account. Then once you're logged in, you will just go into Cloud and then we'll just say, like under this chat, I'll just say, go ahead and deploy the legal folder to Cloudflare. I have already authenticated using the Wrangler tool, so yeah, just go ahead and deploy it. Now, if you don't know already, Wrangler is the CLI tool for Cloudflare where you can deploy your apps from your terminal. And in this case, Claude will use the terminal for me with the Wrangler tool, and it's going to basically deploy my app. If you are not authenticated, Claude will ask you to kind of like authenticate. You can ask, how can I authenticate with Wrangler? And it should be pretty easy to get started with. And I think here we still have some permissions. I'll just wait for this to be completed. Once this is done, I'll just go ahead and run this. Okay, so this is done. It has built the support screen. Now I'll just go ahead and run this. After a couple of minutes, we should have our application or the landing page deployed on Cloudflare. So after a couple of minutes, Claude has deployed our legal pages and it is under this URL. So I have just copied it and pasted right here. As you can tell, it is live and it is working in production. We have the privacy policy, terms of service, as well as the support page. Okay, so that was just an example, but now we have the prompts, now we have the workflow to build this kind of a landing page with these beautiful mockups. I think this is a workflow that you can copy for every single one of your next projects and especially for mobile applications. Now with that said, I think we are completely done with this project. However, there is one feature that we haven't really implemented yet, and I think I'll just leave it as a challenge for you. So here I have attached the image, which is the Refine AI UI design. So basically within the trip details screen, I'll just show this pretty quickly. And I don't know what this is. Let's just say try again. Okay, probably just a demo error that we have in development. So this is the feature that I want you to implement. And it's been like more than 3 hours. By everything that you have learned so far, you should be able to implement it pretty quickly. And I have even attached a demo screen for you. If you didn't really like this, you can take a screenshot and ask GPT to generate you a grid of 9 so you can get your own version and then put it right here. This is also something that I have talked about in the past. And then all you need to do is just going through this workflow. Once again, run CodeRabbit or any kind of AI code review really. And if the feature is complete, save the progress, and that means we have no more feature, so project is completed. Okay, so with all that said, let's go ahead and create a new branch and just commit our changes. For this, I think I'll just call profile. Yeah, I'll just say profile and let's just say legal pages. And then I'll go right here, stage everything. So basically the exact same workflow that we do as usual. Commit, publish the branch. Let's go back into the source code. And we'll just create the pull request. Now, I would usually wait for this and get the suggestions by CodeRabbit and implement it if it was my actual application. And this is something that I have even shown you in the past. But we are almost at the end of this tutorial, so I don't really want to waste any of your time. I'll just go ahead and merge the pull request. But I would highly recommend you to take a look at the suggestions if you are building an actual application. So I'll go ahead and say confirm the merge. Once this is closed, like the PR is closed, we'll just go into VS Code. Let's switch to the master branch and then we'll get the latest changes. Okay, so I'll provide the source code to you for completely free. You'll get it in the description. And with that, I think we are completely done with this project. Now, I think we have learned a bunch of different concepts other than this workflow. Like we have learned about webhooks, we have learned about ngrok, ingest experiments, all about Sentry, AI agent monitoring, how to build legal pages, and even some, some of the most important AI concepts like Claude.md and agents.md. Okay, so with this, you can get the diagrams in the description as well. I hope this course find its goal. Like, we didn't really get the exact same end result with the demo application, but it is very, very similar. And I hope that you're able to see the workflow that we used in this course. Now, if you actually want to get your application built in 2 weeks with us, like, there is an entire school community you can join, and this is kind of like shameless plug that I do right here. Okay, so with that, hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.